call to order the meeting of the Capital Outlay Committee for November 14th, 2024 at 10:19. Apologies for the delay. We had some technical difficulties. Why don't we just go around and introduce ourselves for everybody?
Mark Kelleher, Finance Committee.
Ann Clark Tucker, Planning.
Rich Larius, Town Administrator.
Martha Donovan, Select Board.
And Paul Doan, I serve at the pleasure of the town administrator.
Can we, Scott, can you introduce yourself, please? Scott's online.
Yeah, Scott Norm, representing the Finance Committee.
Thank you.
Frank Wysek, Select Board.
Do you,
I certainly can. Good morning, Madam Chair. Joe Powers, Town Administrator. Charter responsibly for capital outlay, operating budget, anything financial. So I'm joined this morning by our Assistant Town Administrator, Megan Eldridge. And I would say on your behalf, for the record, that you have members working remotely, so you do want to do your votes by roll call. That way you're capturing everything with the two members remote. And then to put on the record that you've exercised your right to go to a larger room, given that you were about to exceed the capacity in the other room. So that is allowed under the open meeting law, because a person reasonably looking to find your meeting will absolutely find your meeting here in the Griffin Room.
awesome. Well, it doesn't look like we have any, other than department head attendees, any other attendees, but if anybody is going to record the meeting, you must let the chair know before the start of the meeting, which is right now. So hearing none. Let's start with old business. Can I get a motion to approve minutes?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Awesome. So I'll have to do a roll call. So Scott,
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Ann.
Aye.
Rich.
Aye.
And Paul, aye. And I'm an aye. So we've approved at least our first two meetings, we've approved those meeting notices.
Madam Chair, you do have your other member, Frank.
Oh, where's Frank?
Aye, I'm here.
Thanks, Frank. I couldn't see you. We have an F there, not your smiling
That's me.
face.
I've been reduced to just an F.
Yeah, we'll try to get that fixed if we can. Frank, I didn't ask you to introduce yourself, so can you introduce yourself to everyone?
I did, yep, Frank Wysek, part of a Select Board appointee.
Thank you. So today we have a number of departments that we're going to review their capital plan, and if it's okay, I think we should start with fire first. Is that good, Joe?
It's the will of the committee.
Okay, so let's have the chief and the deputy chief come up, and they also gave us, it was in the package, they also gave us a handout here, but it's essentially the same updated memos. I think it's essentially the same.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm not sure that the information I submitted about the middle years of the plan had the memos attached.
Okay.
So it had the
Memos.
forms, but it may not have had the memo explanation, so.
So I just, to start with, I did a little review from where we were last year, FY '26 to where we are, FY '26 to FY '29, basically. 30 is just a new ad.
Yep.
And the major differences in your plan, as I see it, was the ambulances for 1.1 million, and the difference in equipment and vehicle replacement, which was up about 240,000. So we'll talk about those, but I think those are the two major changes from a price perspective.
Yep.
And project perspective as well. All right, so I'll hand it over to you, and you can start to.
Okay. So if we start in FY '26, last year we had a discussion about moving the pumper that was originally in 32. We had moved it to, I believe, 30, moving it up just based on the build time. So this is, you're going to hear this a lot today in our conversation. Industry-wide, there are significant delays in building fire apparatus, ambulances, even police cars. Not as much down to that level, but so the fire truck we moved last year to FY '26, that price is the same as it was last year. It's 1.3. We anticipate that it'll be less than that, but that's the number we've been told by the manufacturer to use as a reference.
So can you remind us, like, in the past, what was our replacement timing before,
So-
before we got into this issue of.
Sure, typically a fire truck, the build time was about a year. The ladder truck that was delivered 2.5 years ago, it was a 1-year build time. Pumpers are usually 10 to 12 months. Ladders are a little bit longer because they're a little more complicated. They're now 36 to 48 months is still the industry standard.
Okay.
And the bigger, more shocking thing for me, the delay is obviously problematic, but is the cost. The last pumper we bought was in 2014. The last full-size pumper, we bought one, the mini pumper last year, and an urban interface, which is a different truck, a few years ago. But the last pumper was $550,000, and that was in 2014.
And now they're 1.3?
1.3, so it's, basically doubled. Ladder truck was, and that's a Quint, so that does both functions, so it's a more intricate truck. That was $1 million. And now a pumper, which is much less capable of a vehicle, is 1.3.
So can you just remind us how many trucks you have in your inventory?
Sure. So at the headquarters station, we have the primary engine, which is engine 6.4. It's what we would call a Class A pumper. So it has ladders and hose and water. It's what we normally use to fight the fire. Then we have the ladder truck, which is a Quint. So that also has an aerial ladder on it, hose, ground ladders, attack lines. So it can be used as either or. And then we have the mini pumper, also headquarters, which is, doesn't have any ladders on it, carries less water, more of a utilitarian type vehicle. Can we use it for forest fire or for wildland fires? It's smaller, has 4-wheel drive, but it does have capability. So we use it when with the primary engine's out of service, we use it to augment headquarters, so we're not putting the 40-foot ladder truck on the road for routine calls, I guess you would say. Station 2 has a Class A pumper like engine 6.4, and then it has the urban interface, which is the 4-wheel drive. It's a larger truck. Again, doesn't have all the capabilities of a primary pumper that we buy. It doesn't have ground ladders on it, so it's a little bit limited, but has the 4-wheel drive capability. So we bought it initially. We were dealing with a lot of flooding and with snow. Snow has kind of fallen off the map, knock on wood, for the past few years, but so it gives us a capability. It's an all-wheel drive vehicle that we can put into areas if we're having trouble with access. We have a storm or we have flooding or something like that. We had at the time, we also had a forestry that was an old military truck. We've since repurposed that. It became government surplus, and the town of Marion has it now. So we've kind of scaled back a little bit.
So how many trucks, sorry?
So headquarters is for fire apparatus is 3, and then we have 2 ambulances.
Okay.
Station 2 for fire apparatus is 2, plus the forestry, which is a small pickup truck with like 200 gallons of water on it. We use it, to go in the woods type thing. It's
Okay.
that's what it's designed for. And then also 2 ambulances at Station 2 that are in service. With the last ambulance that we purchased, we kept the trade-in because the amount of money they were offering us was about $5,000, and for us it was more valuable to keep it as a spare. So it's not in service. It's not equipped. It doesn't have a stretcher in it. Doesn't have anything else. We swap it out if we're going to have a vehicle out of service for any extended period of time. And then we have a smattering of administration utility vehicles. Each station has what we call a chase car. It follows the ambulance when the ambulance only has to transport with 2. And then we have a pickup truck at headquarters, and then the chief and deputy cars, so.
And the one that we're replacing for the 1.3 is from which location? Sorry.
So it'll replace the primary engine at Station 2, but with the way we'll work, because it'll be the newer piece, and we'll move the headquarters engine to Station 2, and then that engine, our intent is to keep as a spare also, just,
So it won't be equipped, but if you need to, you
yeah,
can.
yep, yeah.
And where do you store those?
Well, we have enough room in the station, fortunately.
Okay.
We're getting tight, but we still have enough room. And we've kind of downsized the fleet over the course of time and removed vehicles from service that have been less functional, and so that's kind of where we stand with that.
And roughly how many fires did you fight in the last year?
Got me. So Typically there's, building fires in the sense of fires shown, building fires in Harwich have been, we're probably somewhere in less than a dozen. We do a lot of mutual aid. The Cape thrives on mutual aid. It's really the only way we would all exist, because nobody has enough manpower. So that adds probably another 10 or 15 to those. If you were to look at our incidents coded of calls that would meet the criteria from the state as building fires, we're probably upwards of 30 or 40. So those would be calls where we went there. It wasn't necessarily a fire or smoke showing, but there was a appliance fire in the house that extended to the cabinets or something like that. We kept it small, but it would still count as a building fire.
Okay. Did you have a question, Paul?
Thanks, Madam Chairman. I'm kind of curious about, so if we attached a number to the number of vehicles there, it's what, 7 or 8 trucks and
Yeah,
ambulances?
Well, it's,
it's more than that. It's, I believe, somewhere in the number of like 11 to 15. I'd have to,
Okay, 11 to 15. So is there a general ratio, or how do you determine what's required? What is there a number like the state says, if you've got 10,000 population year-round, you should have at least 3?
so there's a couple of things. There's a ISO, which governs your insurance rates, determines a pumping capacity, and we're due for a review from them now anyways, but determines the pumping capacity. So they say based on the square miles of your town, the population, the building construction type, you need to flow X number of gallons at a building fire. So that determines part of it. We have to meet that, otherwise the insurance rates would go up because the classification would get lower.
when you say insurance rates would go up, whose insurance rate, yours or ours, the homeowner?
The homeowner.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I don't want to be clear about that. ISO is a little bit tricky. It typically governs commercial, and this may have changed, which is one of the reasons we have to do a review, but typically for residential, ISO is deemed the Cape as a whole to be ISO 4. So it doesn't necessarily impact that, but for commercial properties, the lower our ISO number, the lower the insurance rates would be. So we're always trying to look to improve that. So that's part of it, what dictates
Excuse
it.
me, but are you saying ISO? What is-
ISO, yeah, Insurance Services Office. It's a company that sets
Oh,
a rate based on fire protection for a community. So
okay.
Class 1 is the best. Class 1, you actually get to put it on your trucks. If you've ever seen a Los Angeles County fire truck, it says ISO Class 1 on it. So that's the best, would be the lowest insurance rate, and then it goes down to 2, 3. Eastham used to be, I believe, an 8, because they didn't have hydrants. So a lot of things go into it. Municipal water supply goes into it. Staffing goes into it. How your dispatch is handled goes into it. And a lot of those things have changed since we last had it done. So we're due to have another reevaluation. But that would be part of it. Part of it is normal operations of the department. So we obviously want to have a basic fire engine in each station that can respond, and we typically have a backup. So when that truck's either out on a call or out of service, when off-duty personnel come into the station, they have a vehicle they can man. So we split the difference at headquarters right now. The ladder truck is also a Quint, so it has the ability to work as a fire truck. So that's our second engine at headquarters, so to speak. And then Station 2, we have the urban interface. The problem with that is it doesn't have all the capabilities of a normal fire engine. So we're a little bit, if we have to run it as a primary truck, it doesn't have ladders on it. So we pulled up to your house and you were trapped in the second floor window, there's,
So do I understand that it's not really the numeric attachment of vehicles to population? It's solely the ability to pump water on a fire?
that's part of it. That's part of it. So the number of trucks isn't important, but they look at what you need to flow at a fire, and then that dictates like your pumping capacity, which would be the number of engines you have. Then they look at the number of,
And where do we stand? I mean, what is our?
right now, we still meet it. But the second part of that is, and it gets kind of confusing, so I'm trying to keep it as simple as I can. The second part of that is.
Simple, folks, is.
No, and I'm not,
Oh, no,
but
I'm
like,
not
I
being
understand,
critical.
I understand it because my job, but I'm trying
Yeah.
to explain it, so the second part of that is the capabilities of that pumper. So just because we have the pumping capacity, so hypothetically, we say it's 5,000 gallons a minute you need to pump. So say we meet that number, the vehicles also have to have a certain level of equipment on them, and that's where we fall short with that urban interface truck we're talking about at Station 2, because it doesn't have ladders on it. It doesn't meet the ISO standard for a fire engine. So that's part of
The factor. And is the working with Chatham or Brewster or something, does that get included in this?
not with ISO. It doesn't.
So do we have ISO on our trucks?
No, we're not a Class 1 department. And I don't think we'll ever get to a Class 1 department because the number that, our staffing would be the biggest shortcoming on that.
Oh.
One of the biggest shortcomings would be our staffing. There's a whole bunch of things that we would have to do. We're in really good shape. A 4 is a good number to be. We might be able to get it down to a 3. We have to look at it, but I don't think we're even close to being a 1.
Okay.
So
Thanks,
is there a future plan that you may have to replace that urban truck with a full ladder truck? Is that a thought process anywhere in your mind?
So, not necessarily a ladder truck, that would be why with this pumper, we would keep the one that we're replacing, so it would give us another fully capable pumper.
I see.
And the urban interface would be exactly what it's pretty much used for now, a specialty vehicle. If we have something in Hawks Nest or where we need to go off-road, or we have snow, or we have flooding, that's how that would primarily be used. Just so we can overcome that capability. And the trade-in value for fire trucks typically is not worth, it's why when we do the sheets, we never count the trade-in, because used fire trucks don't sell.
Right,
They really
right,
don't.
right.
With the last 2 that we've gotten rid of have gone to South America.
Oh, wow.
We've actually, the deputy did one where we had a broker buy it, and it drove to New York City, got on a boat, and was sent down to Chile or somewhere. And I have a video of one that we sold running through the streets of Buenos Aires. And it's painted exactly like it was when it left here.
Can Rich ask a question, please?
Yeah, so we can get back to these sheets.
Yes, sir.
Is there an easier or a more clear way? I noticed that a lot of your priorities are urgent, but they're not in this year, which to me says it's not urgent. If it's urgent that we order it, I'd still say it's high priority.
Okay.
Because it's out in the 27th or the 30th year.
Well, and I think I did the middle years. My understanding of it was for that year, it's an urgent need to replace. It's not urgent for this year. So I understand so for an FY '27 sheet,
What's, in terms of priority of this sheet, if a request is urgent, is it the year that it's urgent, or it's urgent today and it must be put into 26?
First, we remembered that we're relying upon the form from the Commonwealth. And so the Commonwealth's description of these are urgent to ensure the ongoing operations of the department. So I think that's the manner in which the state uses that. So
It's not in terms of calendar year or...
correct, because, right, their form does not hew to our calendar per se. But I think the question would go to the chief. We know the answer, but we put the question out there. Urgent because you need this to operate in the current standards that you've put out there for the
Correct.
town.
correct.
Yeah.
Not in the current fiscal year or current period. In other words, something here is called urgent, but it shows
Yeah, if-
27.
If we were able to use our own forms, which I'm still not adept at, I would probably use the word critical.
or high.
This equipment is critical to the
And
operation of the
so I'm
department.
so to give you my perspective, filling it out, it's
Sure.
urgent for that year.
Okay.
So it's not urgent for this year, it's urgent for '27, it's urgent for '29, it's urgent for those years.
In case a layman picks it up and
Understood.
says,
Yep.
It's urgent, why is it in the year 30?
Yeah.
Okay. That's it.
Okay, so on the pumper, any other questions on the pumper?
No, I want to listen to their presentation, but I do want to reserve the right to ask some questions once they make their presentation.
Absolutely.
That is the presentation.
Frank or Scott, any questions on the pumper, the 1.3 million? It's not, it's the same number that we've had in the plan for a while.
I don't know.
The only thing that comes to mind is how does our rating of 4 compare to our neighbors on the Cape?
It's the same.
Okay,
I think
thank you.
Hyannis might be a 3. And then I believe, especially for residential, it should be the same all the way across the board, but we're about the same as everybody else. And some of
Thanks.
those things we're not going to overcome, because some of those would be like building another fire station in North Harwich to shorten response times, and we're never going to be able to meet that. And that's what it would take to get us down to the ISO 1 or whatever. I won't say never, but
Don't
unlikely.
say never, because you put
I-
400
yeah,
houses there.
Yeah, unlikely.
We'll be having another discussion.
And Mr. Doan, it's 15 is the number of vehicles.
Okay, great.
Frank, any questions on the pumper, the 1.3 million?
No.
Okay, so why don't we head off to the ambulances, because those are going to be a fun conversation.
So the ambulances, originally when I proposed, so we approved an ambulance last year at town meeting. When we went to order it, the vendor that we deal with informed us that it was a 3-year build time. So normally ambulance replacement is about 8 to 10 months. So we usually expect to see them sometime between December and February, depending on, how busy they are and everything else. So 3 years was a shock. I had a conversation with other vendors, with our supplier about other companies that he uses. 3 years is short.
And
Yeah.
could you know what's causing the 3-year?
So part of this was, there was a huge shortage in chassis during COVID because of the chips.
Yeah,
So now this is the backlog that they're trying to dig out of. And I believe that there's a reluctance, at least my understanding, there's a reluctance of the manufacturers to upstaff. Well, there's an inability to, because they can't find help. And then there's a reluctance to build their business big to then have it shrink back when they get rid of so they're just kind of like, hey, it is what it is. Dennis has 4 ambulances on order. 2 of them have been on order for over a year. And they're not expected to have them to within 3 to 4 years. So when that happened, sent a memo to the town administrator saying that this was a concern. We were at the time talking about a special town meeting. So my intent was to submit an order for 2 with the special this year, what's gonna end up happening is when the new ambulance comes, all the rest of the ambulances are gonna be close to 200,000 miles or over 200,000 miles, which is kind of the drop dead point for vehicle maintenance of when they become cost prohibitive to repair. So my thought was, if we ordered 2 more, we would at least have 2 more coming shortly on the heels of the one that we just ordered, and correct what's going to be a problem 3 years from now.
okay.
So when the special town meeting didn't happen, it just became part of next year's capital request, so it's a new request for this year, for FY '26, because we hadn't talked about it before, but it's also one I don't really have another solution for, and it's really like putting the Band-Aid on the bullet 2 years after it happens. It's not.
And all these ambulances are the same, so based on the mileage is how you're gonna replace them.
Yes, yep. So our normal rotation, so you understand, that the primary ambulance at headquarters does the most work. So that, when we get the new one, that's where the new one goes. That one goes to the primary slot at Station 2. The one that's primary at Station 2 goes to the backup slot at Station 2. And that 4th one, or that one that was there, goes to the backup slot at headquarters. So the oldest ambulance is always second due at headquarters. What we've started doing since July, when we figured this out, is we now rotate the ambulances monthly. So we're adding mileage on the older trucks. Typically, we wouldn't do that, so that we can try and conserve the mileage on the newer trucks to make them last longer. So we've been doing that.
So the one that you ordered last year,
Yep.
24, will come in 27?
Yeah, we ordered it in July of '24. They delivered 200 trucks a year when we ordered it. it was, they had just delivered number 5,400, and our truck was 6,000. So it's 3 years.
Madam Chairman, a couple of questions. How about this fourth ambulance, when it gets kicked out of the new station? It's come from East Harwich, right? Comes down to East,
Yeah.
and one gets kicked out. What happens to that truck?
So usually we trade them in.
And so does it go toward the cost of the new truck?
Yep.
And so the trade-in is expected to be what percentage? 10%?
Not even.
Not even 10?
No.
Okay, now, if I had a fire at my house, you'd show up and put the fire out, hopefully, and I wouldn't be charged anything for that.
That's correct.
But if I'm, fall down, which I may tomorrow at my age, and you have to send the ambulance over, I pay to go somewhere, Boston, New York, Hyannis, somewhere in that ambulance, right?
So you pay, your insurance pays, the town bills as part of Medicare, your insurance.
So what's the town bill for that, roughly?
I would have to look at what the rates are roughly. ALS call is between $1,000 and $2,000. It depends. They're all a little bit different based on the skills that were done on the call. And I
So
don't
the
have the exact
insurance
breakdown.
reimburses the town of Harwich?
Yep, so the town is a private billing company. They would look at your run, they would bill that out, just like if you went to the doctor and had a procedure done, you had so much for mileage, so much for ALS care, so much for oxygen, so much for cardiac monitoring. They'd break it all down. They would send you a bill, or send your insurance company a bill, or send Medicare a bill, and they would pay what they pay, and that would, it's typically the end of it. It's not usually an issue.
And how often is that? Is that just 2 a day average, 1 a week? How often are does a payment, let's say, generate?
Maybe you were talking
Well,
about
how
how much
often are you
activity.
So we
called on to
we
do?
do transports, we do about 2,100 to 2,200
A year?
ambulance calls a year, yeah.
And has that number
So-
changed at all?
Yeah, it's gone up. It's typically
Okay.
goes up.
And that money goes into the general fund, the reimbursement?
Yes, sir.
So is that ever considered as an item that could be earmarked to help cover, defray, or in some way offset the
So-
cost of a new vehicle?
So
Would it pay for a new vehicle, conceivably? The money generated from the use? I mean,
Yes.
Is it conceivably a profit center?
it's, so I would say a couple of things. When the town first decided to do ambulance billing, the towns handle it all differently. It comes into an ambulance fund, and the department uses that for equipment, staffing, training. Town of Harwich decided to put it into the general fund. So if we were to earmark that money now for ambulance replacement or something
Yeah.
else, it would take money that's counted on as receipts for the town away from the town. So there would be an adjustment period, and this is a little bit above my pay grade as fire chief, but, so because it's already accounted for in the receipts of the general fund, it's a calculated amount year to year that they expect. So, could it be done? Absolutely, it's
Just
done in other
taking it from one
towns.
account to put it to the
Yeah,
other, and
it-
it doesn't change the cost of things. Because
Well, I
what else
understand, but
isn't included in that is the cost of all the personnel, right? You're
Right.
going with 3 people every time.
So I think that the
generally.
way I look at it is that even though the money doesn't come generally, directly back to the department, it contributes to the greater good of the town, which makes money available for the department to do the things that need to be done. So,
If you're skillful in convincing people, but if it's earmarked, then that concern or need for further action is obviated, right?
we did have a discussion, my predecessor, Chief Clark, had a discussion with the then town administrator about creating like a vehicle replacement fund.
Yeah.
So that we weren't coming back to town meeting, it was just, so much money put in it a year, and then on the second year, we'd be able to buy the ambulance without having to basically go before town meeting or anything else. The struggle was how to fund it. My
So-
understanding was how to fund it, because you were taking money from somewhere else to fund that.
And in my financial head, and I'm the person who really doesn't like debt, but to match a long-term asset by raising debt probably makes more sense. That's how I would look at it, than just funneling that money over, because then you still have to find a replacement in Joe's budget for that money, because that doesn't, not gonna change
But
anything.
it's not necessarily debt funded, it can be funded by.
No, but if you've got a, I am pro-debt when it comes to funding it for an asset, right? Because that's how you want to fund your long-term assets, is through debt. You don't, so you don't want to fund your expenses through debt, but you want to fund your assets through debt. That's just my thought on it. So, so you're matching, and it doesn't mean that, you know, maybe you're not doing ambulances at 30-year debt, but maybe you're doing it at 5-year debt or something like that. I don't know.
We, in this particular instance, we'd be looking at it for the useful life, which right now the chief has indicated is 8 years. So because it's greater than 5 years, we could do bond anticipation notes or small borrowings. And again, and thank you for saying it, we want to do that because we want to rely upon our strong credit, and it's a standard operating procedure. I seem to recall there's some ambulance fund on the books, but it may not be what I'm thinking of. It may be what you've discovered
It's the
before.
ambulance fund that exists now is the donation account.
Okay, thank you.
And it's
All
it's small, it's usually less than $15,000, and it's,
To build off that, Chief's absolutely right. If we as a town are going to redirect, it's a policy decision that first has to go to the select board, and it would have an impact on the overall local receipts, which is our third greatest source of revenue for the operating budget. Doesn't mean it can't be done, as Chief said, but it does require that to be a policy discussion with the select board and directed by the select board.
and just to put a kind of hopefully a period on that discussion, we also have taken advantage for, since 2016, of a program that's called CPE. It's run through Mass Health, and it's supplemental billing through Medicare. Deputy fills out 10,000 pieces of paper, makes me sign them at the end of when he's done, so I'll go to jail, not him. But we fill that out, and that has generated between $120,000 to $200,000 a year. It slides based on what the reimbursement looks like. But, so that also goes to the general fund, but it's ambulance receipts that basically covers what, you know, the insurance company says they'll pay this much. This covers a little bit more of what they won't pay. So we try wherever we can to put as much receipt into the coffers so that when we come forward with a request, it's, you know, it's not just like we're taking all the time.
And I just want to confirm that in 2027, you have another ambulance just to keep the pipeline
So when we went to the third ambulance, back when Chief Peterson was chief, the idea was we replace them every 2 years. Under Chief Clark, when Fontaine went from being a primary care to a urgent center, we added the fourth ambulance just because our call volume increased from like 60% of our runs to 700%, and went up 700%. That's been consistent, but that was when we added the fourth ambulance. So it just extended this life cycle out to another 2 years. But 2 years has been what seems to work right now. When we got off of it, 1 year we skipped an ambulance and we paid for it to the point where we had an ambulance almost decertified by the state because of the wear and tear on the body. We started to get cracks in the body and everything else. So we definitely, that 8 year is kind of the sweet spot, and we're gonna bump right up against it with this delay.
So just, oh, okay, and then in 29, you have another ambulance. So then that gets you kind of back on track?
That was my thought, was we buy the two, we're gonna fall way behind, and then we're gonna infuse 3 ambulances that'll be relatively new, and then we'll go back to the every other year, and we should hopefully get back on track where we need to be. And I'm hoping that this delay goes away at some point.
Right, that would be the
Hopefully,
wish, yeah.
hopefully in 3 years.
We'll see what happens with the economy, but, yeah.
On the ambulance, the chassis, is that the steel frame underneath, or is that the?
Yeah, the chassis is the cab and the motor and the drivetrain and the, you know, the frame of the.
But not the unit that goes on
Not the
top?
box, correct.
That's called the box?
Yeah, we call it box, yeah.
Okay, so that's, the chassis is the delay. Now,
Chassis was the delay.
Yeah.
Chassis is no longer the delay. Now the delay is that they don't have the manufacturing capacity to overcome the delay that was created.
Okay, now, your ambulances are F-550s?
Correct.
Is that your standard going through the time?
Yep.
I'm just throwing out there, would it help, like if you got a F-350 or a 450 to move it along?
So right now, the chassis, our chassis is ordered and in theory exists. It won't be that one, but if there's one, so the chassis isn't the problem right now. The problem is they can't, even if we change to a different chassis, during COVID, some departments did, they went from Ford to Dodge to Chevy to whatever. That's not the problem right now. There's no chassis shortage. There's manufacturing capability shortage.
Okay.
And we're required to have that size chassis on the ambulance because of the weight, because of how many people you're putting in the truck, how much equipment you put in the truck, and actually, so they wouldn't be able to put a 250 or 350 chassis on an ambulance. You have to have a 550.
And the 550, the numerical is the size of the engine, is it not?
The weight that it carries.
GVW.
So
Okay.
450 is 1 ton. 550, I'm not sure exactly the GVW, but it's what pumps it
But
up.
bottom line is, you need the 550.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Other questions on the ambulance?
I have a question.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, so I read about an approach called remounting, which is, I guess, to replace the chassis,
Right.
but keep the box. Have you ever investigated that? Because it supposedly could save like 30 or 40% of the total cost.
So we did look into it. Chief Clark was, once we went to that 550s, Rich will remember these
About
conversations.
4 years ago.
Yeah, we looked into it. The two concerns with it are, because the standards, the ambulance standards are what they are, they basically have to, the body has to be rebuilt from scratch or rewired and brought up to code. So it became a little bit cost prohibitive there. The savings wasn't as great as we thought it was. The other issue is you lose that truck for almost a year. So we would be running short an ambulance while that was being remounted, which created some concerns with us being able to handle the call volume that we have with ambulance billing, with a whole bunch of other factors. So that was pretty much why we steered away from it. It just didn't seem like it was worth, wasn't as advantageous as we thought it was when we first started looking into it.
And then what would you be gaining in terms of the useful life of a vehicle to
So
do
the
that?
box essentially would be new at that point, newish. It would still be, because you can only remount twice, I believe, was what we came up with.
Rebound twice, and also the technology in the box has to be up. So we are talking about that year, it's just not the chassis,
Right.
it's the upgrade.
So the
on
only
it.
thing you're really saving is buying one new box for one cycle, but in the process, you lose that truck for upwards of a year, and you're spending almost the same amount of money, I won't say almost, I haven't looked at it in a while, but a significant amount of money for essentially a box that's,
And you're
And
basically,
we've gone through this also with fire trucks, where we've had them rebuilt, pull them out of the garage in Rhode Island, and it didn't make it on the highway, which means it went back into the shop for another year, maybe?
sore spot with the deputy. He was driving
I
there with
just-
the time.
This group doesn't, you guys weren't around at the time, but we thought, let's refurbish the truck. Take it in, refurbish, good, get a call, goes down to pick it up, doesn't make it to 95, breaks down, back in again. So I think they're doing the right thing.
and you based that 1 year on data you had before the pandemic, could it possibly be?
Yeah,
different?
remounting, I don't even know what it would be
Right.
now. I mean, that's,
And the people that remount the ambulances are the ones that are building these ambulances as well.
So if they're already strained
So
with
if they're already
resources.
strained with building trucks, it's
Yeah.
gonna be the same people that you're trying to get this in.
The rebuilds are gonna take second priority or
Right,
something new, because you're getting more money for the new rather than
Yeah.
refurbish. Very good.
Okay, any other questions on the ambulances?
Just one more, I'm taking the minutes, so I want to be exact. When Fontaine went to urgent care, you basically have to assign one ambulance for Fontaine?
no.
Okay.
No, we don't assign one ambulance to Fontaine. It just, because the call volume was increasing, there was, the chief at the time, Chief Clark, felt that we needed to maintain and staff a fourth ambulance so that we were still providing the coverage to the town that we should provide. But there's no truck dedicated to Fontaine. First call, Station 2 comes in, wherever it is, that first truck goes to it. And then we cover the station behind, and the next call gets handled by the next truck up.
You mentioned a 700% increase. What was that?
Initially, it was a 700% increase, but that's because we only went there like 60 times a year before that, so.
Okay, it's okay.
The other thing, Mark, is that, from a citizen standpoint, what happened is, if you go there and you're deemed necessary to go to the hospital, Harwich is the first phone call.
Right.
that they make. So that's why this call volume went from 0 to 700, because it was down the street. And they didn't call Brewster, or they didn't call anybody, they called Harwich. The revenue stream seems to be there, but again, from this issue about being reimbursed, the fire department is not a revenue profit center. So you live with what you got. That's what I got.
All right, so
Okay.
we want to move on to equipment purchases and replacements? Is that last year it was called vehicle replacement, same category? Or you've
yeah.
expanded it?
So, Madam Chair, if I could, I think that's a question for me. If you're talking about the second line under fire department,
Yes.
engine/other fire-equipped vehicles,
No, the third line, sorry, equipment purchases and replacements.
285.
Yeah,
285.
That's the monitors.
yeah, so that is,
the language is consistent, I believe, and I'm trying to be consistent with other departments with
I'm not
similar.
sure that we had anything in that category last year.
Correct.
So,
But you also don't have vehicle oh, you do have vehicles and you have nothing in there this
Right,
year?
correct.
Okay.
Yep. So the equipment purchase replacement, I'm gonna let the deputy speak about this, is our cardiac monitors. We have 4 of them, 1 in each ambulance, a required piece of equipment by the state.
Okay.
If you wanna talk about where we're at, what the plan is with that.
Yeah, so the amount to replace those 4 monitors is $285,000. It comes with a full lifetime, or warranty with that. And basically what they're saying is every 10 years that these monitors need to be replaced, newer technology comes out. So we're at a planning stage of trying to replace these. We have submitted a grant to replace them. We submitted it last year, and it was denied. We're gonna submit it again. We went over the grant language with the feds that hand out the money, and we feel very confident that we're probably gonna get the money in a grant form next year. So, but in the meantime, we're gonna put it forward as a capital expense, and see if we can move this. If we don't get the grant, then we still need to get them replaced. They're a critical piece of equipment. They're on all 4 ambulances. They're EKG monitors, doing electrocardiograms. It's what the paramedics use to see how you're doing and hopefully correct how you're doing and interact with the
Do we,
physicians at the
do we
hospital.
have to own them?
Yep,
They
Oh,
don't, they're
yeah.
not leased.
they're not leased.
They're not leased. We have not looked into the leasing. My experience with leasing, when we've tried to put it before, is that the town would rather borrow the money than lease. It's typically been, I'm not saying currently, because I haven't had that conversation with you, but in the past, so no, we didn't look into leasing, we looked into buying.
I've got an issue with technology and buying it. If the lease is comparable, the net present value of a lease compared to the buy, in terms of if the technology becomes obsolete,
We can look into that and ask
you know,
them
I'm just,
before,
Yeah,
per year.
throw it out to you.
sure, and there's no objection to that. In fact, I think you'll see in years past, we always have that standard article that allows us to do leases. We would also want to look at the potential for lease to purchase.
Yes.
And last but not least, we would never borrow for these. These would be an outright acquisition using available funds.
Yeah, but when you talk $250,000, over $250,000, I'd like to see a possible alternative,
Sure.
only
We can absolutely look
because
into it.
we're talking about delivery of these things, these vehicles, 3 and 4 years down the line. We're allocating funds in today's dollars for something that might, I don't know if the price is guaranteed or not, but certainly the technology is not guaranteed to when these things are delivered. So I'm just throwing it out.
The good news is there's no delay on these. We get them, we show it.
Where are you
off.
gonna put them, in the back of the car?
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm just,
Yep.
We'll look
No,
into
we
it.
definitely look into leasing.
we
just
can leave the
typically
number
haven't.
there. We're not committing years out.
Just a question, is the life expectancy really 8 to 10 years then? Okay.
That's the recommendation.
Yeah, but if you're delivering it,
Madam Chair.
being a
years
car
from now.
3 years from now,
Yeah.
that goes down to 5 years.
Got it. Then you're past that point.
Yeah, past midpoint.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, if I could, real quick?
Oh, yes.
Just a question through you, because your memo says that total cost is equipment, including 4 years of a service agreement? So if we go 8 to 10 years, we'd be extending the service agreements?
Yep.
Okay.
So, just a little clarification of that, when we apply for the grant, as part of the grant, we can fund a service contract, I believe, for up to 5 years, 4 years or 5 years. So that's what that price is, we just use the grant number, refresh the grant number for this article. We have continued to pay service agreement on the existing monitors past, past that. So, and that's worth it, because they literally come down and PM them every, do
Yeah.
maintenance every year.
No objection, no doubt, but another reason why we would not be borrowing for this type of a purchase. You don't want to be borrowing for your service agreements.
Right. Mark?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This summer at the convention, one of the biggest issues was protective clothing. Because your existing clothing, correct me if I'm wrong, has PFAS and it's led to an increased incidence of cancer. Will that, I guess there may be, and you can better explain it than I can, a 3-year window to change out your equipment, and will that be a capital item, or should it not be a capital item now because of the, the occupational hazard?
So I won't have a long conversation. There's a lot of mixed information on the PFAS and the forever chemicals and what they put out. There is no gear that's safer than PFAS-free at this point. We will not be purchasing anything.
I just got back last night,
Frank,
so.
can you please mute your phone?
So the,
Thank you.
We will not be purchasing any different until something changes, until it's a proven product that's out there, because based on all the research that's being done. The legislation that was forced to be passed, and that was passed, was essentially a move by the state to force the manufacturers to come up with an alternative. They know there isn't one out there. So at some point, it could potentially be a capital item. We replace 6 sets of turnout gear a year. I think that we would probably try and make this work through that, or through a grant,
Okay.
versus trying to do a replace, because it's right now, it's 80 sets of gear. Everybody has 2 sets.
Okay.
So that would be, and right now, they're $5,000 a set, total set. I imagine once they make it PFAS-free, it will be much more expensive, because, it's PFAS-free, and that's how that works.
Yeah. Okay. Good explanation, thank you.
Paul?
Maybe this was explained early, I might have missed it, but on the grant, is this a state or federal grant?
Federal grant.
Federal
Yeah,
grant.
it's Assistance to Firefighters Grant. Comes out every year, and this is a high priority item for the grant. Except we didn't get it last year, we wrote for it. We fine-tune our grant request with the help of the grant people, and we're confident, there's no guarantee, but we're confident that we'll get it.
Okay, so like a change in administration isn't going to likely affect the availability?
You never know.
So what I would tell you, based on what we know, is that this grant that we're applying for is currently in this budget. It started in October. It's this year's budget.
Yeah.
So in theory, January should not affect this grant program.
Okay.
But it was cut last time, back in 2016, by the soon-to-be new president back then, and was restored by Congress.
Okay.
I'm not sure that would happen again based on how the landscape looks right now.
Hey, I was done. And Deputy, you're the grant writer in the,
Christina Regan is one of our firefighters. She's absolutely fantastic when it comes to writing grants.
and
Her,
Joe, I guess
myself and the chief basically do this together, yeah.
we don't have a grant writer on the staff.
We don't. However, there are several employees, as the deputy has said, that are highly adept at it. The assistant administrator and I track programs anyway, but we rely upon the department heads. I can tell you from firsthand experience, we're probably one of the more active recipients, so seeking and receiving grants on Cape Cod. Because my colleagues and I in administration complain about filling out the same exact forms day in and day out for the same town for different grants, but all from the state. So we do have it as a goal, we do have it as a metric for department heads and their departments, and I think we are well served by that. I would never say no to a grant writer, but before I said yes to a grant writer, I would want to say yes to a contract administration.
But generally, a track record is
Excellent,
very good, yeah.
excellent. And that's a direct testament to the departments and their savvy, skills, and
Seems as
knowledge.
though if he's having to spend time writing grants, it would be a poor use of his time.
The good news about the AFG grant, excuse me for 1 second, but is that it was originally designed to be, any firefighter could write the grant. It was not designed to be a grant writer's grant.
Yeah.
It's designed to be the layperson grant, so. And I will tell you, having done it for a lot of years before I was promoted to chief, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I was luckily very successful for many years with the process. So I think that there's more politics involved in it than anything else, and we have good relationships with the politicians, and we leverage that whenever we can.
And
Madam
about how much of the 285 would you expect that you might get a grant for?
It's 5% match.
Less than 5%, yeah, so
Okay.
285
Yeah.
minus 5%.
Okay.
And just last point on grants,
I thought the
they're,
payroll-
they're speaking about federal. My comments are more to state, and the state has done a great job. They have that one portal now. So when I say that the assistant administrator, I track that, we get notices all the time, and the state has done a streamlining, seeking the grants. So that's how we're able to stay on top of it. They haven't done a great job yet of streamlining the forms that we need to sign, but beggars can't be choosers.
Okay.
Good.
Any questions on the phone? I'm going to try to move this on because they've been here a while and I want to get you guys out of here, but, no? Okay. Vehicles, you don't have anything in for vehicles, so you're not expecting you're going to have to replace any vehicles?
No, we made some significant adjustments with the last vehicle that was purchased. We got rid of some extra vehicles. We had to replace the fire inspector's vehicle ahead of schedule, but with moving some stuff around and downsizing a little bit, we think we're in good shape for
The
the
next 5
foreseeable
years.
future
Okay.
with like staff and utility vehicles.
And then there's a headquarters update out in 2030 for
Yep.
550,000.
Yep, so headquarters, believe it or not, everybody still refers to it as the new fire station, is 30 years old next year, which is insane to me because I started working in there very early in my career, so that, I guess I'm older than I thought. A couple things, the living space, as we've added staffing, is getting smaller, so that kind of needs to be addressed. It's not critical at this point, but it's becoming an issue. The HVAC in there has always been, like every municipal building, it's HVAC, government HVAC, I don't know why it doesn't work when it's in a government building. So part of it would be to put some mini splits into that to control the individual rooms. The bunk rooms, they can control the temperature in those spaces separately from how it's controlled now. And then the third part is station alerting. We are way behind the curve with how that works. So that's when a call comes in, they drop tones, lights come on, the system that's in there it's an updated version of the original system was put in 30 years ago. Station 2 has a newer system that's computer generated or computer technology based, but still, the goal would be to get them both on the same system and both compatible with what the sheriff's department's using for a dispatch system. So we would get immediate information electronically versus how it works now. So,
And then my next question is to Joe. Is this something Sean is involved with for the station?
Well,
the
if
update?
he isn't, he should be, and going forward,
Go in the other
it
property?
would go under that line of the facilities maintenance.
Okay,
so I did talk to Sean first.
yep,
Partly because part of it with the station alerting wouldn't be under his purview, but part of it because it was renovation, he said, submitted it to the department head, obviously he's going to be involved with it. The numbers are Sean's numbers.
okay.
So
That's all I
he's
need.
definitely involved with it. We had a conversation and he wanted me to submit
just
it
wanted
this
to make sure
way
that was-
versus under
Okay.
his.
And I have no argument with the way that we're handling it.
Okay.
There's a transparency element here that I appreciate. It may be in the future year under facilities, however.
Okay, perfect. All right, so can we wrap up fire? I know Rich wants to move on to the next. Any other questions? say no, please. Okay, thank you so much.
you very
That was
much.
very
And I will,
informative. I know it takes a little time, but it does help to go through
No,
it.
thank you for your time, and I appreciate the questions. And I will, as I do typically, I took some notes on some of the questions that were asked, and I'll get you some accurate numbers on terms of the information you're looking for.
Awesome.
Just so that you're not using my off-the-cuff numbers.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you. Thank you
you.
so much.
Sorry, everybody.
And I would just ask Water Wastewater for their patience. Can we let John go first? Would you be okay with that? Thank you. Okay, John, come on up.
Oh, yeah, don't say.
Madam Chair, if I could, no, by all means. John, this is your walk-up music. There is a matter that John made me formally and publicly aware of. So unless there's objection.
No, I don't,
So John has announced his well-deserved retirement, effective
Yay for you.
I know, right?
on his anniversary of birth, so next March. So I wouldn't,
This coming March.
thank you. I
not
will
extend
not
it a
miss
year,
any
huh?
opportunity to talk about John, and now knowing that his career with us may be coming to a glorious conclusion for his next steps.
Yeah, it is.
Just want to put that on the record here.
Well, we will miss him. I will miss
He
him.
will be
He's always been so
very
helpful
sorely missed.
and knowledgeable. But you're gonna love retirement. Just take it from one. I tell everybody to retire.
I'm looking forward to it. Job well done.
That, yes.
Thanks, Jen.
Oh, this is helpful. Thank you, John, for this.
Listen, this was the mild version. It gets worse as I, thank you, sir.
They had asked for some pictures, so. And this is-
Yep, oh, yeah. Perfect, thanks, John.
So, John, if I do the same thing from last year to this year, not including 2030, your budget changes about $80,000. That was the total difference in your numbers from FY '26 to FY '29. So not as significant, and that was all in the bulkhead replacement
Right,
planning that
the
you
increased
added.
numbers that
Increased
I
numbers too.
provided
So
for this coming year.
just to give a summary for what we're gonna look at. All right, do you want to start with Allen Harbor? So we did do a site visit today, and so this would be, we asked a lot of questions of John, and Sean Libby was there, so he was able to help as well. This is where we can, if there's any deliberations or other things we want to talk about, this is where we would do it. But why don't we go through each individual item, and we'll start with the Allen Harbor Jetty, because we didn't really go through that in our site visit.
I can do that, Madam Chair, but can I just go in order?
Yeah, all right, your order's different than ours, that's fine.
Because Allen Harbor is not this coming year,
Okay,
it's the
that's
following.
fine, that's fine,
If that's okay.
yes.
Members of the board, thanks for having me. Yeah, we did do a site visit, and a lot of the, I think, questions about this project, which is the big one, well, it's a significant project, and that's the Saquatucket Marina bulkhead replacement. So, as you see on the plan, I have requested $770,000 for the engineering, design, and permitting of that project, and then 2 years later would be the construction part of the project, which would be for FY 2028. So what I've provided you, I kind of summarized it in our site visit, but I've provided you the GEI consultant engineering report that took a look back in 2017 as we were doing our marina project. They gave me an assessment of our bulkhead. We did consider significantly the condition of the bulkhead and whether that's something that needed to be done as part of that capital project when we replaced the marina. And as you can see, it gives you kind of a good summary of what they found, and the fact is that our current bulkhead at that time, still had 10 years of life in it. And so what I've done based upon that is include this project on the capital plan, so that here we are at
coming up on year 8, we're going into the engineering, design, and permitting, and then year 10 would be, replacement of the bulkhead. As you read the report, and I know you probably haven't had time to do so, but, I mean, the bulkhead shows age, and it was built in when was the marina done? I mean, it was 1950 or something. I mean, it's.
Good year.
It's served its purpose for sure, and it's still in pretty good shape. I mean, yes, there's wear, and yes, eventually it will need to be replaced, and, but based upon the assessment that I got, I have projected ahead 10 years for replacement. So, I know you didn't get a real good look at it, because we were at high tide, today, but, we did discuss maybe it would be prudent to bring back that engineer who did the assessment, almost 6 years ago, and see where we're at. And
So if
get
there's
another
any life
read-
left in it,
Get another read on the condition of the bulkhead. What they did, as you see, is they took readings of the steel piles that really is the most important part of that bulkhead, the thickness readings. They looked at the condition of the batter piles. We changed out, I just read 18, I couldn't remember the number, but significant number of the gussets, that is the critical connection point from the batter piles to the steel piles. So we've done some work to prolong the life of it, but maybe that's something that, and I can talk to my boss there, town administrator, and see if that's something we want to do. But I know it's a big project, but eventually that bulkhead will have to be addressed.
So if I can, I just want to say to Frank and Scott, I will scan these in and send them to you, so you, because we're just getting them now, so you can also review them, and any questions you can hopefully bring back next week.
John Mayer.
Yeah, thank you.
Electronically.
I have them electronically. I can-
You might email in,
Okay.
maybe you can send it to me, great. And I think what you also said was that if you were to do sort of an engineering review before you went into the planning phase, just to see what the condition was, that you had the money somewhere in your funds to pay for that.
Depending on,
So that's all news to Joe.
Actually, it's not. We
Oh, okay.
talked briefly.
yeah, I mean, I think, I don't think it's a big number. I think, certainly I have a couple of receipts reserve funds that we can utilize with town meeting approval. With
Yeah, if I may. What we would also look at is, this is the sort of topic that comes up under our other professional technical services lines. Many of the departments have them, including administration. So I try to populate that to anticipate needs such as this. So John does have access to receipts reserve funds and other funds uses. However, given what we expect to be a fairly nominal cost structure, because it is engineering, so we're not burdened by procurement in that regard. We have an existing vendor that is very familiar with it. This is something that could be done presently.
So we asked a lot of questions. Does anybody have any questions on this project?
I do. And Joe, maybe you can answer this. The architectural price is $770,000. We get a single source. Is that above the level that you'd get another bid on, or?
So the 70/70, as I understood what the harbor master was saying, is architectural work, design work, but also permitting. So that, how did you arrive at that dollar amount?
That's based upon their estimate. They gave me an estimate back when I first put the project on the capital plan. They broke it down, and I should have made a copy of this.
Is that GEI?
This is GEI. They actually gave me a cost estimate for the total project that included engineering design. So at the time that we received this, the engineering and permitting price tag was $650,000 of their total price of $10,565,000 for the total project, okay? So before you know, as I got ready for this coming season, I went back to the engineer and said, hey, can you give me, if there's an increase in cost, can you tell me what it is? You know, because this was given to me back in 2022. So that 770 is a result of an increased price since then for the engineering, design, and permitting. Just to be clear, 20,000 of that was an added element to the project, because we want to put a davit, offloading davit crane over on the east bulkhead for the commercial fleet. We have one over at Witchmere, and we've had a significant request from the fleet to put one at our primary offloading area, which is Saquatucket. So that is the reason for the increase to 770. That's part of the reason. The other is just prices have gone up.
Just one more question, if I could, and this may again be directed more towards Joe than you, John. You've done a great job. If we get the, normally when I have plans, I go right to construction. Do we have financing in place? Do you anticipate if we get this engineering plans that we could go ahead in 2 years? Or, I hate to use old plans, would we consider that, you know, we're not gonna go to construction because of whatever reason, financing, whatever, that we may not go to construction 3 or 4 years, and therefore, the architectural plans would be 2 years old by the time we get to construction? Just a thought, if you think the financing is in place, it makes sense to get the plans done, because I understand from John, it takes 2 years to get them all set and the permitting in play. The bigger question is financing in place. What's the likelihood to have that so we can go right to construction?
So right now, there's zero likelihood because it's in a design phase. So I cannot commit to a close to $10 million project in future years today, and we wouldn't. That's not how the plan operates, that's not how the budget operates. However, given how we see that year playing out, that is something that we would be looking to do as a debt exclusion. It is something we would be looking to do to some level of borrowing. It may be its own borrowing, but we can't get there until we do this in fiscal year '26. So that, I think typically the town has committed that when we go that far on design, architect, permitting, and all that, the next step is the commitment to the financing and the funding. This is a construction project under the procurement laws, so there's going to be a need for an owner's project manager. This is not a simple act that's going to happen. So I can't answer the question as far as financing, because it's not for me to say. It's for me to build and develop. I'm meeting later on today with our interim finance director to finalize funding for this plan for fiscal year '26, but also to strategize on this plan as it looks going forward. And that's the best we can do. If the financing isn't there in the out years, yes, there would probably be a need for the town to re-energize the specs and the design elements, as well as revisiting the cost for our owner's project manager. We wouldn't expect these costs to go down in any way, shape, or form.
And is the owner's project manager in the 9 million?
So construction oversight is part of this bid of $10,565,000 total cost.
And is there a contingency built into that?
There's a
Thank you.
contingency of $2,113,000 included in that.
Madam Chairman, unlike the fire department, which is not a revenue-generating part of the town, the harbor could be considered a revenue-generating part of the town, is that correct?
We generate revenue.
Can you refresh us on what you generate a year? Or just off the top of your head, John? Is this like, so sometimes we do this with golf, right, and other parts of the budget? Is it $1 million a year?
We bring
or
in
so?
about $1.5 to $1.6 million in revenue.
1.5 to 1, and that includes Allen Harbor.
That includes all of
All
our
the harbors.
waterways fees, which all of our harbors, all of our moorings, all of our landings, our ramps, all the permitting that we do for offloading, and that's the total
And that's gone up since the harbor's been
it has,
regenerated.
it has.
Just because I feel required to do this, it's still a 10 to 12-year waiting list for a slip, is that correct?
At least, yes, ma'am.
At least. Okay. So this is our wonderful generating harbor that still is constrained by who can get a boat in there and who can't, correct?
I mean, that's just Cape-wide. There's just not enough marinas on the Cape. I mean, you know,
It might be coastal-wide, yeah.
it's just, that's just the reality.
Too many boats.
There's
Too many
just
boats? Yeah,
Just
not
easy
enough
to
there we go.
fix.
You know I need to invoke Yogi Berra. Correct, it is so popular that no one can go there anymore.
Exactly.
Modified it slightly, but that is the, and I think you'll hear that later on from golf, you know.
Exactly.
You know, the good news is it remains incredibly popular. It is one of the cornerstone programs that we offer for everybody. And I took John's advice myself and put my $10 check in for the boat that I don't own yet. But come my retirement time, I may.
Yeah, I've got 12
And it
years.
could time out perfectly.
It could be perfect.
11 years.
Yeah. To that point, though, there's been a lot invested in the harbor, and it does return to, and those funds go into the general funds as well.
Yes,
And I did quickly look it up. It was dredged in 1968 and opened in 1970.
Yeah.
So that's the history of Saquatucket.
I do want to perhaps put something on the record, though. You have a waterway improvement fund. How is that populated?
We have a waterway improvement fund. We actually have two. One is populated with our waterway user fees that we collect from every single boater that boats within the town of Harwich.
Outside of that 1.5 million,
That is included in,
in that, okay.
but it's separate. So
Okay.
we have two funds set up that
What's in
don't
that?
go into the general fund. They go into the funds for waterways purposes, maintaining our facilities, dredging, whatever it may be. They're funds that are dedicated to waterways improvement.
Okay.
And the other fund is populated by our mooring fees. And we generate,
You've got some split in there.
$140,000, $150,000 a year just in.
But your totals of 1.5, say,
Yes.
million per year.
Yes.
And just because it was a sore point last year, just to bring it up, did you ever get your generator?
Well, it's been approved. It's not installed yet, but it's coming. Thank you.
The
Yes.
generators are done?
Yes,
Okay. Thank you so much, and we'll miss you, John.
appreciate it.
Paul?
Madam Chairman, thanks. John, I'm puzzled by one issue here. If, let's say, the funding becomes, or is available to have the survey done, and the survey indicates that there's still 10 more years of life in the existing structure, that changes the ballgame, right, in terms of at least the fiscal years that this money would be needed to make improvements if this study shows that there's sufficient life left. Am I correct in that?
From my perspective, absolutely it does.
Yeah.
I mean,
So if we put the 770 in here this year, and how long would it take for this work to be done by the engineering company that did the work in 2018 or something to come back and check it out? What would be the time frame for that work to be completed? But before May, or?
I think so. If I don't have to go to town meeting to request funding for it, and if it's available to bring in somebody now, I think it could be a
Oh,
relatively
I was of the opinion
quick
that there was a pool of money that could be tapped into available now to bring them in tomorrow, for example.
I'll defer to the town administrator on that.
There may be, but that is, as I understand it, in support of the broader work that needs to take place in fiscal year '26, as outlined by the request. Is that correct?
So, from my perspective, I've been told that we need to get this bulkhead done by a professional engineer. I'm not an engineer. That's why it's on the capital plan. I'm planning ahead. So if we determine by bringing in an engineer and they say, hey, listen, since we did this back in 2017, you have very little degradation here, and we think we still have 10 years of life in this bulkhead, then I think we can adjust our capital plan to reflect that. If that's what you're asking, that's the way I look at it.
So that's what I'm asking, and I mean, my sense is that if the study was done, I assume the person that we bring in isn't the person likely to be involved in the actual replacement of the bulkhead, if that's required.
No, that's not accurate. I'm gonna bring in GEI Consulting, who did the original
Good. Okay,
assessment,
yeah.
and
All right,
he's
so-
likely gonna, it'll be my recommendation, be the engineer
Yeah.
for this project.
Okay, and let's say Joe says, okay, here's the money, how much is that gonna be? Let's say it's $30,000. And Joe says, here's $30,000, get out and get this guy in here. And he determines, is it conceivable then, if I understand you correctly, that he could complete this work prior to the town meeting formulation of the articles?
I
and
believe so.
Let's say March or something, April. He could get it done between now and then, right?
I believe so.
So, if that study showed that it wasn't needed on the time frame currently, then the time frame would be adjusted to fit that new development.
Correct.
So, does it make sense to in any way sort of say this $770,000 may not be needed in fiscal year '26?
I think you want to.
Is that fair?
I think you want to take the worst-case scenario, and if you do that study, and we have time, because this plan can change before we
Yeah.
get to town meeting, then we could shift it once we knew that information. And that's assuming, the resources are available to do it, right? I mean, that's.
Correct. So for me, as you go through this process, and just a gentle reminder for everybody and perhaps viewers, what you're doing is giving public voice to all the projects that all these departments are contemplating, not just in fiscal year '26, but in the future. In the meantime, I'm working with our finance director to identify a funding source for the fiscal year '26 budget, of which this is a part. At present, if there are no changes to fiscal year '26 and what we're looking for, we have funds available, and without any extraordinary acts. So, yes, we would do a touch-up review, as I will call it, in the interim, to have GEI validate their analysis dating back to 2017. But I think to the chair's point, and my concern, I'm neither an optimist nor a pessimist. I try to be a realist. In 2017, before we had storms that have battered our coast, we were told that we should plan for a new bulkhead in 5 to 8 years. We're 8 to 10 years past that point, so we may be on borrowed time. So that's why it's still in the plan, that's why John's presenting, that's why we're talking about that intermediary step. But absolutely, if the check-in, as I'll call it, indicates that our experts say, no, you've got more time, then we will push it out.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not encouraging that by any means.
No.
But I just think from a sensibility standpoint, receiving by the general public, that's kind of thing, well, let's do the study, and if the study shows and we don't need it yet, then we'll
I just
be able
think
to
in
move
this
this
town,
on.
it's easier to take something off than it is to
Yeah,
add it
no,
back.
I agree. I just wanted to clarify.
Got you. Any other questions, Scott or Frank, on this one? Good, okay. You want to continue
Sure.
on, John?
So the other project for FY '26 on my capital plan is a replacement of the Harbor Master truck with a F-250 or equivalent. I've had this on the plan for many years and contacted Kyle, and he gave me the updated price that I should put on there with regard to a replacement cost. The truck is, just because of the environment it works in, it's in really bad shape, so, looking for.
All right, so,
Just a quick question, Madam Chair.
yeah, I'm sorry.
The F-250, which I do believe you need because of the the boats you pull. Will that be set up for plowing, so you can at least plow somewhat? I realize that big lot, you need a front-end loader, but you can at least plow during the course of
Yeah, I
storms?
prefer not to put a plow on that vehicle, because we do have a plow on the other vehicle that our maintenance officer utilizes. We have an F-350 currently, and we have always been on a replacement plan. When an excess one comes, or a replacement one comes in from another department that's in better shape than ours, we typically get that. And so we do have a plow.
Okay.
And we do plow our lot, or in some, in some instances. My suggestion wouldn't be to put it on this one.
Okay, let's move on. You want to, you pick which one you want to do next. You wanna do
Okay,
Allen?
so the next one I have is Allen Harbor Jetty
Okay.
for FY '27. This is a project that's been on the capital plan for many years. We have already had the engineering design, and permitting is, if not complete, very close to being completed by GEI Consulting. They did a presentation to the Board of Selectmen several years ago with the recommended repair alternatives, which have been selected by the board. And so we have the plans in place, we have the permitting in place. We had pushed it out from the original date to FY '27 for a couple of reasons, one of which to see if there was any grant money available to help fund this project. I haven't been successful at that. I tried Seaport Economic Council grant, who we've been very successful with getting grant funding for. They don't put money towards jetties. I tried the Mass Dam and Seawall Repair Program. They also do not entertain doing grants for jetty work. So, it's a project that, just to give a brief history, we dredge Allen Harbor every year. We take about 8,000 cubic yards on average out of that channel to make sure that it's clear for navigation. The jetty is porous in certain areas. I think sand goes through and over the jetty. So every year, we require to have it dredged. The upside of that is that sand that we take out of the channel is great sand that helps us immensely to keep our public beaches nourished. And so, while it's expensive, and it has gotten more expensive, we used to pay $12 a cubic yard for the county to dredge material. They just last year upped it to $26.50. So if you do 8,000 cubic yards at $26.50 a cubic yard, you're looking at over $200,000 to dredge the harbor. So the project is to have that jetty repaired, and they split up the jetty in two sections. I gave you a chart there that Zone A and Zone B. There's different methods that they're looking to do. Zone A, they plan to drive this FRP composite bulkhead type material to drive it in front of the jetty, and then, raise it and top it off with more stone. And then Zone B, they are going to repair it with armor stone and so forth. So it's a big dollar amount. It's needed. I don't think, and the engineers haven't indicated that it's in catastrophic shape, that it could fall in the water anytime soon, but we are spending money every year to clear the channel. So if there's any other questions, I showed you some pictures there of the jetty that we're talking about. It's only the west jetty that we're talking about, the longer jetty that you see in the picture.
And I think what we decided, Ann and I have seen it, Mark has seen it through his travels out there. it's a next year project, so maybe early next year, in the spring, we can go, we won't be doing it with John unfortunately, but maybe with the new harbor master, we could go out on the boat, because that's really the only way you're gonna see it, and that might be a good site visit for next year.
And it would be good to do it kind of early spring before we dredge, so you can see the shoaling of it.
Okay.
Just one question.
Yes.
Is there another source of, actually, these pictures are great because you can see all the sand that infiltrates, it really shows it. Once you do that, because I do know, like on Earl Road Beach, I mean, there's no beach there. What would we do for another source of sand?
It's a great question, Mark. I mean, we're always gonna have to dredge, I mean, it's not like we're not gonna have to dredge Allen Harbor any longer, but it would probably be on a 3-year schedule instead of every year schedule. We dredge Saquatucket once every 3 years. The available sand will diminish. I mean, that's one thing to consider, one downside, because we're not allowed or permitted to just go out into the ocean and pick up sand from the ocean floor and nourish our beaches, You have to do biological, chemical testing of all the sand every time you do permitting, and I mean, there's a process and a permit that allows us to now put material from our channels onto public and private beaches, but, the source would certainly decline.
I do know, just one last thing, at the Herring River jetty to the east of it is a whole sandbar from that sand that comes over there. I don't know if that's a source or the permitting would be so difficult that don't even consider it.
Taking sand from, like, I think it was you asked me the question, why don't we take some of that sand that builds up at the end of Earl Road Beach, right? That's private property. I mean, by all standards, I mean, that home, their property goes out to the water line, and so, pulling sand from that, it's not that easy, it's a little complicated. So, and I think it would be the same thing over.
Yeah, it's in front of Mill Point, but it's out in the water, but whatever, when you're out there, sometimes you'll see it at low tide.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking on the inside of the jetty?
No, as you go out Herring River to the left,
Yeah.
Mill I
Point.
think it picks up all the sand from the Belmont Beach, and you can see at low tide, it's all light brown. And, you only get 2 or 3 feet of depth there. Just a thought.
But you're talking on the inside of the channel, not on I thought you were talking it build up outside the jetty.
I'm talking about in terms of a source of sand. As you leave the Herring River on the left
Yeah.
there,
Yeah,
there's a sandbar it's been there for a while, but I suspect
but
it's.
not in the channel, outside the
No,
channel.
it's not in the channel.
I got
Not
you,
allowed to, right?
yeah, we're
Not
not.
allowed
All right, any other questions on Allen Harbor? We'll talk again about this
Uh,
next year, but,
Yeah, just one question. I wonder if it would be useful to do kind of the overall budget impact of the project, including the savings on dredging, which would offset the debt. I assume we'd have debt service on the project itself. I mean, the numbers you quoted sound like it might actually pay for a big part of that debt service.
by not
Be good to know in terms of justification for why it isn't as expensive as it seems for the public.
What's the dredging cost per year at Allen Harbor?
26.
Well, like I said, they just raised our rates, so if we dredge 8,000 cubic yards of material at $26.50 a cubic yard, you're talking $212,000.
So every year, so it's 600 and something, as opposed to 9 million, right? So you save,
We're not talking 9 million for this
No,
project.
this is
I'm sorry,
23,
23.
2,400.
Yeah,
Right,
about
so
24.
I mean, 2.4 million,
2,400,000.
sorry.
2.4, sorry. So just rough numbers, you're saving 440,000 perhaps, because you're gonna do it once rather than every year, once every 3?
We'll probably end up having to do it, and I don't know, we'll see.
It may
I'm
not
just
be.
saying, if
Storm
I
activity,
compare it to
whatever.
Saquatucket, who,
Yeah.
we have a pretty good jetty system there, we're dredging it every 3
Every
years.
3.
So, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's an unknown.
Hard to
hard to make that business case that it's a for sure.
It would be.
Okay.
But it sounds like it might be about 150,000 a year of savings on average, going from every year to every 3 years, if the annual cost is 220 or so.
But what does that mean for the long term of the jetty? Like, if you don't do it, like, I don't know, is there an impact there?
Well, it could fall, it could fail, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, could it totally fail? Yeah, I think it could, but I think, again, what we might want to do, if for some reason we think we shouldn't do this, then the next step would be to regularly get an assessment, an engineering professional assessment of the conditions of the jetty to ensure that it's not getting any worse or getting to the point where it becomes catastrophic.
So these are wonderful pictures, but I think a real, the missing point we've got today is if you look at this from the side, it's Swiss cheese, right? That's the thing. It looks solid here, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, there's some
When you're
there are areas
underwater.
that they found that they've reported in their assessment that are porous, that
Absolutely.
All right, I don't think that one's resolved, but we'll revisit that next year. You won't have to do it.
Yeah, I mean, but it's really hard to answer that question, because I don't know whether it'll be every
Right.
2 years,
Can't
or
build-
once we,
Right.
if we were to do what's recommended, we spend, $2.5, $3 million to redo the jetty. It certainly will have a benefit, but, does that mean we still have to dredge every 3 years, or maybe every 5 years, or maybe we don't dredge, we only have to dredge past where the jetty goes, because sand will continue to go around the jetty? It's not that
We
straightforward.
live on a sandbar.
We do,
And the variables are kind of hard, and we don't know how severe the storms are going to be.
that's right.
All right, so the one last, we'll go quick on this one, the Herring River ramp replacement, which is for FY 2027, 300,000.
Yes, ma'am. We currently are doing the engineering design, which got, the engineering design and permitting got approved last town meeting, so that's in progress. I anticipate it, will be ready to go for construction to replace the ramp. It's very similar to what we did over at Round Cove, if you remember that. We replaced that ramp. It's a small ramp that needs to be pitched properly, and the current one has been repaired a number of times, but it's in bad shape, so, yeah.
So, John, I'm just going to ask, I think we're done with questions, right? Anybody else? We're done? Can you, I'm going to have you do what I make sure all the committee members do. Can you send this to Joe and Megan, and then they'll send it to me? That's how we're supposed to.
Send you
coordinate it.
electronic.
Yes,
Yeah,
please, and then I'll send it out to Scott and Frank.
I sure will. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay,
you,
thank
John.
you. Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All the best.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
We will miss you, for sure.
I've loved every minute of it, so
Awesome.
I will miss it too.
So I think I lost the.
New phase.
What is
New
that?
phase.
Thank you.
All right.
See you, John.
I think I lost the wastewater department, did I?
You got a, yeah.
Thing to precede whether.
I appreciate your patience in waiting. I know this has been long,
Something we can get that in the works.
but I think it's
Oh,
been
yeah. We've already
productive,
talked.
at least for us, to go through these. We'll go through yours probably in just as much detail. So we'll do wastewater first, is that fair? And then,
Well, if I
Wanna do it
could,
all?
I'm going to make an amendment to the layout of the plan, so you can see that there is a list for the water department,
Yeah,
then there is watershed management,
yeah,
yes,
and there is wastewater department.
right.
So I'm going to return to alphabetical.
okay,
The plan will show a wastewater department, which is what Jason can speak to as our wastewater superintendent as far as operations, as well as Madam Chair from the Board of Water Wastewater Commissioners. They'll be able to speak to the department, AKA operations, of water and wastewater. The watershed management plan, or the WMP, is construction matters, and that's me through the select board.
Yep.
And I can tell you that the reason why there's zeros there right now is the board has not formally committed to a Phase 3A, which was known as the Great Sand Lake, so we're continue to evaluate and work on that and discuss that. But I believe, to be clear, what the superintendent and the chair can speak to are what they can always speak to, the operations of our award-winning water wastewater department. And I say that with a hint of jealousy because administration typically doesn't get awards, but they are in fact operating an award-winning department and program.
So can I just ask one question with respect to Phase 3A? Is it expected that that will come forward before we get to town meeting, that a number would be in this plan?
Yes, so very quickly, because I don't want to take up any more of their time, the town is working with GHD to proceed on the intended use plan, which we have to get our applications into the state revolving fund to be put on the IUP, and we'll hear sometime in early January. This is a matter of ongoing conversation with the select board, and so we still have time available. It may not be in the plan that we talked to the select board and finance committee about in December,
Right.
but that doesn't mean it couldn't be in the plan that goes to town
So my
meeting.
hope would be that it would come back through this committee.
I agree.
Okay.
I absolutely agree.
Okay. So, thank you for your patience. I know it's been a long one. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Why don't you both introduce yourself?
I'm Noreen Donahue, the chair of the Water Wastewater Committee.
I'm Jason Trepanier. I'm the new water and wastewater superintendent.
Welcome. So, you guys choose who wants to go first, and
What would you like to do
He
first?
gets-
Water or wastewater? So I'll leave.
well, let's do wastewater first, because that doesn't have a big number on it, and that
Yeah, it's really
hopefully
good
is not controversial.
Sure. That's for a new vehicle, the 150,000. So that was previously submitted, and it was submitted, I do believe, for 65,000.
Yeah, we had a conversation about this last year with Dan. I said, I bought a SUV, a Honda, and I paid a lot of money. I don't know. That seems like not enough.
So this is our first wastewater vehicle that we
Okay.
will have. Right now, we have a Ford Ranger. I believe it's a small vehicle for what we need it, for all the tools and things. They priced an F-150, and that won't be sufficient enough for the department.
Okay.
So what's happened is, this vehicle here that we upgraded to will have a plow. We'll be able to plow out all of the pumping stations. It will have a utility body on it, so we can have the tools necessary to do any work that we need to there. And also, it'll have a crane. The crane will be able to lift any of the submersible pumps in the pump stations out of the wells that are there. And that's pretty crucial to keep operations going. So that is the drastic change in price, from 65 to 150.
Okay. And that's under wastewater. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my,
Madam Chair, while you're looking, may I
yes,
ask a
please.
question?
Yes.
How many pumps do you have now that you could potentially need to pull, and how much do the pumps weigh?
So the pumps, right now we have 6 pumping stations. I do believe there's about 6 more that are coming on, 6 to 7 more pump stations that are gonna be in phase 3. Those pumps can weigh anywhere from 100 pounds to 150 pounds, and then maybe 50 to 60 feet deep.
Okay, this is a power,
So this is a power crane. It's a crane that will sit on the utility body, and it basically maneuvers out, goes over the pumping station, and you're able to hook onto the cable that's down there, and you're able to lift that pump up and do the necessary work you need to do.
I just happen to think of something. The pump that's near the pump station near the corner store in Chatham, that has a stationary frame, does it not?
That has a crank, yes.
Okay.
That's outside all the time. I like to look at those as a backup,
Okay.
because when you're cranking those, it doesn't really do the work of the one that's on the vehicle itself. That you can actually, so when you're cranking it, you have to move around. You'll have I do believe it's a wireless
Remote.
a wireless remote that you can actually go up and see, because those pumps run on rails as they go up.
Okay. Just one more question, Madam Chair, if I may. All of these equipment requests, are they paid through the water department, wastewater department?
Yes, the
Okay.
the enterprise fund.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
Joe, I
No,
don't
the
see that we
wastewater-
have
The wastewater.
form
yeah.
for that 150,000 in our package.
I do. I'm not sure if it just didn't make it.
I don't have, I looked, and unless I missed something, I don't see that I have.
Okay, so it made it to your draft plan, your layout, your.
Right, yes, I
spreadsheet,
see it
but you
there.
don't have one of
I
these.
don't have
Okay.
one of the
What-
sheets. I don't know if anybody else does. I just don't have one of the sheets for the 150.
It
Does
was
it-
sent in your updated packet.
Okay, I can always,
I had, that came out in a previous one, I believe.
yeah, oh, all right,
Yeah,
then
that's-
that's why I don't have it.
It's in the
okay.
October
These are just
24th.
additions, got it, okay, that's my bad.
Noreen,
I-
can you make your
I'll
statement?
take one.
The question about retained earnings?
That's okay, we got
I believe there was a question about funding and retained earnings.
Ann said you have money in your,
Off, everything that's on the plan.
Okay, thanks.
It's paid for through either the water enterprise fund or the wastewater enterprise fund.
you. You are self-funded.
Private-
You are self-funded on that. There we go.
okay, so, any other questions on the vehicle? Scott, did you raise your hand? I'm sorry, can't see.
You buy vehicles
You guys, you good? Frank, you good?
I'm good.
Okay,
I didn't raise my hand.
all right, so that's it for the wastewater department. They want a vehicle.
They, if I may, they need a
The
vehicle.
crane.
Yeah.
Absolutely, without
Instead of
question.
want.
Okay. Fair enough. Now we get to water, because, I've kind of done this with every department.
Now, does everybody have a packet for the water, or do you need one?
No, those are in here.
Is that?
Yeah,
Okay.
we should be all set. So I did this for everyone, Noreen. So your budget from last year, FY '26 to FY '29, FY '30 is brand new, went up by 1.6 million, and that was 800,000 for the pipe I can't say it. Discontinuity, thanks. And vehicles for 800,000. So those were the big changes dollar-wise in your plan this year. Okay, so I'll let you guys go through, maybe we start with vehicle replacements, because that just basically wasn't in a prior, it hasn't been in the budget. So that's all new, and it's a fairly significant number.
So the
Says
vehicle,
350?
Yeah, vehicle
The
replacements.
350.
Well, the total for the year, for the all years is 825.
Oh, go all the way through.
Yeah.
Yep.
So tell us what's going on with vehicles over there.
so we are on a, I'm gonna say the big one is probably in FY '27, the 350,000. That is for the, for our dump truck. After FY '27,000, what we're told is there's gonna be a $50,000 upgrade for a diesel vehicle in the state of Massachusetts. Our current dump truck right now, mechanics at the DPW are saying that it's not really gonna last, there's a lot of rot on it, and, we should look at replacing that. So that's why that has been moved up, along with the savings of the $50,000, because it will be a diesel.
Okay. Can you maybe help us understand why these weren't in a prior budget?
Jason wasn't here then. You know,
So it's your fault, right? Just, let's just put it on him right now.
yeah. You know, I'm really not sure. I actually have to go back to our water rate charts because I'm curious to see why they weren't displayed in last year's. Through best practices of enterprise funds, we're required to look out, in addition, to what we do for transparency for the town. But we're required to look out many years and vote our budgets so that the water rates totally will fund them and leave an adequate supply for emergencies, for retained earnings, which is generally considered to be about 20% of our operating budget of what it runs generally. So, and that's a lot of fancy talk to say I'm not sure why they weren't in the other years.
So I know in other departments, we went through, when vehicles were less expensive, they didn't maybe hit the $50,000 mark. That's not the reason. Because they've been, in some departments, they've been on and off the capital plans.
No, we don't have sedans, or, we don't have anything inexpensive,
Okay.
so anything we buy would always make.
Was it something maybe because it was paid for through your funds that it wasn't necessary to come onto the
I
capital?
wish I could say that.
Okay,
you
all
know,
right.
But it's.
But it's here now,
Yeah.
and it's here to stay.
I don't know if they
For
perhaps
800.
reevaluated, last year. We actually are having our department meeting tomorrow to go over these in detail, so I'll expect Jason to have those answers by tomorrow at 9.
We're giving them a
But
lot of
they-
time.
They are, things
They-
that the department has said that we anticipate to need.
Okay.
Can you help us understand, like, how many vehicles are all the vehicles you have being replaced over the next 5 years? How many
No.
vehicles do you have?
We have quite a few. I want to say maybe about 12 to 15.
Okay.
So trucks.
Is that including, yeah, we have a number of different utility bodies. We use them to plow, we use them for meter reading, for the digging crew. They're water treatment vehicles for people to go. So we have a number of different personnel going in a bunch of different directions, doing a number of different tasks.
Okay. Do we have any other departments, Joe, that just don't have their vehicles on this plan that we need to worry about?
Well, typically vehicles come under the Public Works line directly,
Oh.
vehicle replacement. So I believe in years past, and it could be that it rolled up previously, Dan may have worked with Link and Kyle to have that on the plan, the overall plan, because Kyle still does some
Yes,
service
he-
for you, is that correct?
Yes, he
Yeah.
does that.
So what I've tried to do for transparency's sake is break it out where this autonomous board has a department that needs vehicles, that's why they'd be listed. It is possible in years past that Dan, Link, and Kyle had it embedded in the overall because DPW still services.
Right,
And so you can see on the plan that there are different occurrences where there's a reference to vehicles. And I would disagree with Jason insofar as he said they have a lot. And from my perspective, the town has a lot of vehicles in total. There's nothing extraordinary going on with water and wastewater.
12 to 15 is a reasonable number.
It is supported by the hundreds of miles that they traverse daily in service of their operation.
And just to go back to wastewater, these vehicles are not used for, like, when you go, I have one of those little huts at the end of my street. If somebody from wastewater is going to, I don't know what you call those huts, going down to check on that particular location, they're using a wastewater vehicle, or they're using a water vehicle?
That's correct. It'll be.
Wastewater.
Yes, that will be the wastewater vehicle that we had just spoken.
That one
previously
vehicle?
about. Yeah.
Well, can I add that currently in wastewater, the services for checking some of the things are done by Weston and Sampson. We have those services contracted.
I see.
Because we don't yet have enough customers or residents connected to involve having staff and all the equipment that would be involved. Now, as we look further down the road, many years, when we have larger groups of people, we'll be talking about adding wastewater staff, or maybe we'll always leave that contracted, I'm not really sure
Right, you'll do
now.
the trade-off
But-
of which makes more
Right.
sense.
But at any rate, right now, we don't have a steady enough need to have employees on the staff on a regular basis for that. So the truck that you see, I don't know if it's our truck or if it's.
No, I
It could
sometimes
be a
see
combination
a
of
town
both.
truck
Yeah.
goes in there, and I don't know what they're checking, but,
Yep.
make sure the electricity is still on, I guess,
Yeah.
and it's pumping.
Just as a baseline, do you know how many customers we have online now?
For the wastewater?
Wastewater?
Yes.
I think I should have checked this before I came. I think we're up to about 350 maybe. That's ballpark.
So now
but-
is all of phase two, the deadline was extended, but we're coming to the close of that extension, aren't we?
The close
Yes.
of that is in March, but we still have about 150 more residents to
100?
connect to phase two.
Wow.
So that goes to 500, and then just, and if you can't answer this, let me know, but phase 3 or phase 3A is about how many customers?
Well, phase 3 is a separate project.
Yeah, it is, but
Right,
just
but
like,
it's, all right. Well, phase 3 is that
About five.
600?
Yeah, about 500 to 600.
Yeah.
5 to 600, so okay, 5 to 600.
And then 3A would be 150, and that's assuming it gets done and when it gets done and how it all works
I've
out.
heard people use the figure 150, I've never seen it in
Oh,
a
okay,
report, so
okay.
I just would qualify that.
500,000, 1,100 is what we're talking about in terms of people or hookups.
Yeah, but that,
That's over the
phase
next,
3 is gonna be
5
a
years.
build of 3 years, and then they're gonna have 2 years to connect, and then it probably is gonna get extended, like it always
Right.
does.
But the total of people connected is about 1,100, 1,200?
Not yet, no, only a
No,
couple
no,
hundred.
at the end.
Oh, yes.
Well, that'll be at the end of those phases, then there'll be phase 4 through 7, which at this point, the town hasn't decided where they'll go. If we assume that phase 4 may go in West Harwich to take advantage of the sewer pipe, I
Oh,
mean,
because
until
they're
the
laying through
engineers
28,
design that
yeah.
phase and,
Some of those phases could be really large,
could be.
Okay.
Mark.
The Max six-wheeler, what year is that? Roughly, if you don't know what exactly, just roughly. And I'll just take it a step more. You have somebody on your board that is probably very familiar with Mack trucks, because a large contractor in town uses them. So it may, just a thought that whatever their replacement schedule is, that they,
I can get you a year on that.
yeah, as I said, there's a contractor in town that uses almost exclusively Mack trucks. I'd be, you don't have to get back to me, but I just would feel comforted to know that our replacement schedule is similar to what they may have. They actually should be replacing it more often, because it may have a lot more use. But second question is, the Peterbilt, does that match the equipment that the DPW uses, so that we have, some of the same equipment we're all using?
Yes, so we want to, I do believe we have a Peterbilt now, we want to replace it with a Mack.
Okay,
And that's one of the reasons is they're more set up for the Macks.
okay.
They are with the Peterbilt. So Peterbilt, some of the, I do believe some of it's becoming obsolete with them.
All right, thank you.
And may I ask, what is the dump truck used for by the water department?
We use that for all the digs that we do, service repairs, service replacements. So that's,
So to remove that soil?
yes.
Okay, thanks.
Do you want to continue out with the replacements and the out years? I think they're pretty straightforward, but, so 220 and FY
28.
28,
Sure.
Is,
There's a catch-up here.
we never have things in the same order, so it is a lot of
I was
paper
doing that.
shuffling, sorry.
is the van,
Okay, this would be the van, $70,000. We have an electrician that is on staff, and he uses this van, and it's coming to the end of its service life. Let's see.
That's the E350, it's 70.
and then the next one's the utility construction truck, is that correct?
Yeah, 150.
That's the one.
So the, excuse me just for a moment, the Peterbilt is a 2014.
Okay, thank you.
I want to get back to the van here. I'm looking for it. What year is that?
It's year 28, it looks like.
Yeah, I'm not, so that van is, I was just looking for the year, it was, what year is the old one is. It's an E350, the van, it's basically coming to the end of its life for the electrician, and he needs to, it's, I'm not sure how many miles are on it. I just received this morning, and I was looking for it, and I only have F-350 on here. So I'm a little bit,
If I could make a
I
suggestion.
don't have it. Oh, yep, E-350. It is a 2008. It was at the bottom of my page.
So we tend to be very curious people, we ask all these questions. So what the fire and police department do, which may be helpful, is they give us a list of all they don't necessarily all have mileage, sometimes they put the mileage on it, they give us a list of all their vehicles, and then we can see why they're replaced. Usually it's because of the age of the vehicle or the mileage on the vehicle. So that might be, going forward, maybe helpful, just so that we're all on the same page and we can kind of see.
Yeah, this is, so Steve is our assistant water superintendent. He does all of the outlook on all the vehicles and their replacement. And he has a vehicle replacement program for every year that it goes out. And then he works with the DPW and the mechanics there, and he sees how much the cost is to start to repair these. And then if there's any known issues with them, if they're rusting out, or if they need major repairs, and then he'll sit down with them and say, well, okay, what is it looking, do we need to push this one up on the list? Can we hold this one back?
Okay.
And that's what he does.
Okay.
And that's where I'm getting my list from, is from Steve, that works with the mechanics.
Yep.
So your 2008 vehicle, by the time you replace it, will be 18 years old, is that correct?
That's correct.
Jeez Louise.
That's
Good,
pushing
good
it.
on you.
Well, they do, they do take care of their vehicles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they try and get as much life out of them as possible, so.
And all these numbers do not include a trade-in, because the trade-in's gonna be nothing.
Nothing.
Just wanna make sure. Okay.
Yes.
Because sometimes I think people have put the trade-ins in the past, and I personally, if I were budgeting it, I would just budget it for the whole amount, because who knows about the trade-in? The trade-in's a luxury if you get it.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. The other one on that list is a 2014 F-550. And that will be coming to the end of its life.
Okay, perfect. And then we have 165,000 in 2029, and that's an F-350,
Yes,
an F-350 and
that's
an
right.
F-150. A work truck and a Ford Explorer.
Yes. Well, that was put in there. It's either going to be a Ford Explorer or an F-150, to see what works out the best.
Oh, I see, okay. And again, it's replaced because of the age of it and the mileage on it, and the condition.
That's
Now-
correct.
Yeah, and that one's in 2029, so 5
Yep.
years
And then we have one in 2030, an F-350 work truck for $90,000.
Yes, and that's a 2017.
Okay,
A lot of these vehicles that are on here also have a lot of idle time. So they'll be on the road and they will be running. The lights will be on, they'll be working, people working next to them. So there's a significant amount, a lot of idle time. So
Right.
sometimes when you take a look at the mileage isn't that, can maybe a year, but the idle time is what they're.
It's wearing it down.
Yeah.
Yep, okay, great. All right, so questions on vehicles, I think, we got through that. They are what they are. They probably hopefully they came out of the DPW budget and into here, and it's not a brand-new add to the town, which is what we're hoping for. And they're old and well-used.
Yeah.
All right, do we want to go to the new construction well?
Would you, 2026 for
Oh,
the
sure.
pipe discontinuity?
Yep, let's do that one.
Excellent. So that $100,000, what we did was we took the 1.5 million that was for this year, we pushed it out to 2027. We increased that to 2.2, and that's where you're seeing the increase. The 1.5 million I didn't think was enough. And in order for us to get a good number to put in there, we needed an engineering to come in and give us a set of plans.
Yep.
So, and then we could get a good estimate to come to you with a cost on what it would cost basically to replace that 2-inch, that 6-inch, that's down on Harbor and Mill Road. That's AC pipe.
And where is that
So-
again?
That is on,
I think you did have it right, Harbor Road.
Yeah, Harbor and Mills Road.
Oh, Harvard.
Is that down near Witchmere Harbor, that section?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. So what's happening now is we're having water leaks down there. This AC pipe, it almost becomes spongy. And it's like, it just will disintegrate. And then what we have to do is we have to keep digging back, and we have to find a solid piece of pipe to put a coupling on to make that repair. And what's happening is we're having a hard time trying to find the fittings to make that repair and to put the pipe back together.
But this goes to that, our water department, every time you open up a road, it's like opening an antique shop, is that
Yes.
about right?
Well, we're trying to solve that.
When, do you know when that pipe was put in? Is it, how old it is?
If we had Commissioner Alan Thompson
Yeah.
here, he
Yeah.
could tell you
Yeah.
exactly when it was put in. He expected to be here today and wasn't able to make it, but.
Can I just to make sure I understand, so this pipe was expected to be done last year, it was not. So it's moved to this year, and the price has gone up, is that what's happened?
It is what happened, but also correcting pipe discontinuity is really a continual process.
Correct.
We have to become more aggressive with it, you know, as the pipes from 1936 continue to degrade.
Can you believe they would degrade after
I
that
know.
many times? Really?
And it's not just the degradation, it's the difference in the sizes of the pipe, you know, the 6 inches trying to join into the 8 inches and all of that. So we kind of always had a continuing program of that anyway, but now everything is more expensive, requires more advanced planning. So now Jason, coming on, has decided to break it into specific areas rather than just have like a coverall pipe discontinuity program.
So do you have like a list of what, like, you know, these are my top 5 that I want to do? Because there's nothing in the out years, so,
So that is what we will be looking at.
okay.
So I'm looking at, so our master plan, it was from 2012.
Ah.
So what I'm doing is I'm looking at doing a new hydraulic model of the system to see where our hydraulics are, to see what the deficiencies are, to see what we actually, see what we need, to see what we need to increase in pipe diameter size. Once that's done, I can put together another master plan that's gonna bring us through for another 10 to 15 years.
Okay.
So
And
that's.
then we would see that reflected at some point in the future
And then
in
you would
this
see that
plan.
reflected in here, and it would give, it's all, they would give us a number of different roads that we need to increase for fire protection, where he was talking about the insurance, the chief. So that would also help within the town.
Okay.
So once we know the deficiencies in the town, we can start correcting those, and you'll get a better master future plan.
So our plan won't be fix them as they break. We'll have an actual plan. I mean, some of them are going to break anyway, you know.
Yes, they will.
It's going to happen. We're going to have water problems.
Excuse me. Is the asbestos cement an anomaly? Is that just an unusual situation? Or is it commonplace now throughout the town?
It's an unusual situation, I do believe, down there. There's some 2-inch that's down there that's an odd size. That is, we're having a hard time
Okay.
finding that. Sometimes it's oversized. So it's not like a common regular. And there are a number of towns in the Commonwealth that have that.
But in the future, we'll be replacing, as Noreen said, just plain older pipe. We won't be running into this situation here with the asbestos AC that much?
You don't know.
No, when we replace it, no, we won't be. But there is still AC in town.
Oh, there
So
are?
we're still
Okay.
gonna be running into it, and that's why, what she was saying is, we're
Okay.
actively trying to replace it and get it out.
Just
If
a
I could also add, I believe that's also common throughout the Commonwealth
Yes.
with the older systems that you have. You know,
We
that
never
was
know
the
what we're gonna find.
cutting-edge technology and supplies at the time.
So just for clarification, this is the 2.2 million,
Yes,
and it's gonna be done in '27?
That's correct.
And can you just tell me, is like this one rose to the top because it's the worst? Or you don't know that because you want to do a whole survey?
So this is one of the worst. This is one of the ones that we would like to correct that's down there that they're having problems with right at
Okay.
now. So,
It goes all the way to the boatyard, it's that whole area. Okay.
My guess is as you're doing the sewering, that would be the time, if you had one, that you would also fix a water. But you're over in East Harwich, but they're probably not as old as some of the others.
Actually, what I've been told is that for both phases, certainly with phase 3, we as a regular process do advance work. We stay ahead of the opening
Right.
of Huddersfield down the
Okay.
road. We stay ahead of the sewer construction to do any repairs that we can in those areas, so.
And further to that end, also stormwater.
Storm drains.
Right, the
So we're
drain.
doing
Yeah,
the
they-
three,
the
correct.
They
Yep.
upgraded drainage on our
Mhm,
street when
yep.
they did it, which
Yep,
is
it's
helpful.
a sound practice that
I
we
just want to make sure that
Yep.
we're considering that.
Those things we're usually able to fit into our normal budget, which is why you don't see them on here, because
Yeah.
the construction period is years, you know, and usually those road repairs.
So say that to me a different way, wait a minute. So
So-
you are still I mean, pipe replacements that cost 2.2 million are still coming onto the capital plan,
Correct.
correct? You're not using your budget to do
Correct.
those kind of
No.
things, okay.
But the normal repairs too, for instance,
Ah,
on North Street isn't
okay.
very long, to services, or the laterals to the
Right.
stubs, things like that, improving them, if it was an old street.
Right, I mean, I think the idea would be you got the street open, right, let's fix everything in it before we close it back up.
Correct.
That's the idea as we
Yep.
go through this, okay. Yes,
Question? So a project like this with quite a long useful life, I think it said 50 years or more, would qualify for long-term debt, and then it's the debt service that is put into the retained earnings, water fund, separate fund?
Yes, the debt,
Okay,
the water department does its own borrowing, and the debt service goes into our operating budget every year.
right. Okay, thank you.
Debt service.
do you know how much debt outstanding you have right now?
No, not off the top of my head.
Okay. We have
But,
pockets of
but
debt
yes,
everywhere. Do you
yes,
know
in the
how
report,
I
we do,
go?
yeah.
I'll tell you,
Sorry.
one
There you
good
go, Martha.
example, though. Last year, we had 2 projects in front of us, which were just getting started on. One was it 14 million for the route, the planning?
Route 28.
Route 28
Oh, yeah,
water
yeah.
main replacement. And the other was the 1.4 million for the painting, the coating of the
The
Pleasant Tank,
yeah.
Pleasant Lake water tank. And when we looked at our situation, because every spring, we have to look at the whole picture to determine our water rates, we realized that we could use some of our carefully saved retained earnings, and we put 1 million for the water tank away last year towards that.
Oh, good,
Through
okay.
town meeting. And come this spring, we'll see, I'm hoping that we can put the other 400,000 of that project aside, so that won't even have to go through a debt service
Which would be
procedure. But
nice.
that's unusual. We
Yep.
have to be very careful with our retained earnings.
And how does that all wrap around? Like, if we've approved that as debt at town meeting, and it ends up where luckily we could source it from another source, does that
Actually-
somehow get closed out?
No, in advance, we tell you, no, that will not be debt. Like, for instance, with the water tank, we made it clear, it's in the article, that 1 million of that was.
Oh, it
gonna
was
go-
in the
written
article.
in the
Yeah,
article.
Okay.
It says it has to say it.
And then, generally speaking, we have authorized debt that is also unissued. Not particularly in this example, but that's how the town does it. We have the authorizations available.
Right, so
We
like
have-
the.
we have a vast
phase
capacity.
3, we had 50 million, we only raised 41.
42, but correct, and then generally, meaning we have the authorizations, not specific to these folks, but that's how the town structures its debt going forward.
And then at some point, like phase 3 finishes, there could be, it may be more than 42 million, depending on what happens.
Correct.
It's a 3-year plan,
Yep.
but let's say.
We have
42
54 million
million.
appropriated for 42 million.
Right,
Right.
say that's that's the number, and there's 8 million that you're authorized for, but you're not gonna need for that project, that gets closed out in some sort of a way.
Well, in that particular instance, not to get too far afield, that's wastewater. That gets re-amortized by the state revolving fund, because that's how that's being handled. But generally speaking, that's why our debt capacity is massive, meaning for the town is upwards of 120 million, where we borrow in the order of 39 million.
Right, okay.
Just to, while we're on debt, Martha.
My favorite topic.
I can't help it. But, for instance, our Route 28 water main replacement did not make the intended use plan that Joe was referring to in terms of 3A 2 years ago. That particular year, the state was focusing more on towns that had problems with PFAS.
Okay.
And luckily, we do not, but I guess unfortunately, because we
Right.
will eventually, and you know, those funds are not available to us right now. So that particular project, we are paying for in total with no assistance from the state revolving fund through water retained
Yeah.
earnings. So
Okay.
those kinds of adjustments.
Although we get some sort of a break, right, because it's a state project and
No.
we because where they were gonna open the road and we could get it
Oh,
done?
yes, that's a
from that
perspective thing.
Okay.
Yes, we got a
Okay.
huge break because
Yep.
we joined with
Right.
Department of Transportation.
Okay. Any more questions on the pipe discontinuity? I said it. Okay, so we've done that one. You go next. Your
It
choice.
would be the new well construction and the water treatment plant upgrade. So this is out at station number 10 that we will.
North Howard,
What's that?
North Howard.
Yeah, so we've been through the approval through DEP.
We're getting shut off, we're going.
Okay,
Sorry.
We have
Get
to
more
move around.
animate.
You have to
We've been
move
through the approval through DEP for a new source of water.
Right.
So, and this is to finish that project.
This is the end of a much
This is
bigger
the
project.
end, yes, this is the, so that will be for construction. This will be, and will be to finish the well and have it tied into our treatment facility and be able to utilize that for the future of the town and the water sources that we have.
We're ahead of Chatham and other places on this because we started this well so early. Is that about right?
Yeah, it takes a while.
Right.
It takes like 5 years to get a new source approval.
Okay, I just want to take credit that we're ahead of Chatham.
I mean, we're always looking, we're always doing well exploration for new sources.
So as a public service announcement, I haven't been watching your meetings, but where are we with water based on the fact that we haven't had a lot of rain, and how are we doing?
Yeah, we're good.
We're good,
Yep.
okay.
We'll see how we are next spring, you know,
Right.
for
Yeah.
recharges
Depends on the
to
winter.
same amount, you know, but we were good this summer, and as I always say, as a former superintendent, always told me, you can't keep the water till next year.
Right.
So if you're good, pump it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions on the well construction design? Is the
Right here.
design can I ask one question first? Does the design take place before the construction? But it's all gonna happen in fiscal year '27?
Yes, so we're currently working on the design now. So we're currently working with the engineers, and I just had to send them a mod flow file of the Monomoy lens, and they are going to put that in and see where we are,
Okay.
and then they're gonna start designing, and that's when.
And how are we paying for that, Joe? Just, did
There
we,
was on a previous,
was that
yeah.
what, I can't remember,
was
so.
early.
Okay.
I think it was 2 years ago.
2 years
I
ago.
remember the number 600,000, don't
Okay,
quote me,
okay,
but
all right,
but it was a previous year.
yes. Oh.
Madam Chair, thanks. I kind of have a hydrology question here. How many wells do we have now? 6, did you say, or something?
I'm trying to remember
How many wells do we have?
How many wells, we're adding in well, but how many do we have in service now?
I do believe we have 11, this will be 12.
12. And are they all kind of distributed around the town, or are they concentrated in the town forest or whatever?
Some are not. Some are next to each other that pump through a green sand water filtration plant, and some are by themselves.
And when you put a new well in, is it generally the case that it would be in a location where there's an existing well? Is that preferred, or is that only drawing more water out of the same aquifer?
So it really depends on what you're trying to do. A replacement well, you want to do it near a existing well, because the life.
Piping.
The life of that well has deteriorated, and you're basically going to retire it. So you should be within 100 feet, and it probably, if you can be within 100 feet of that well, then you're probably talking maybe a year and a half, and you can have another well up and on and running. A new source well is one that is brand new, that you're going to introduce, and you're not replacing one. It's going to be a new source, and I would suggest putting that near a treatment plant so you can run that water through the treatment.
Okay, and that's what we're talking about here.
That's correct.
It's a new, so we'll go to 13 with this?
No, it'll go to 12. I do believe we
Oh,
have
we'll go to
11 right
12.
now, and this will be number 12.
Okay.
And that well will run through the treatment facility at 10.
And just sort of a point of interest, I guess, on my part. The connection that is required to the hookup of the sewer system establishes a price, is that right? Somehow there's a connection fee to connect a home to the pipe itself. Is that in your department? Is that you?
That's a good question.
Well, you mean the large interconnection with Chatham?
No, I think.
No, I'm talking about an individual homestead, a property connecting into the feeder pipe into the sewer treatment plant.
So from the point of view of the resident,
Just talking a hookup fee.
that expense is paid for by the homeowner. The construction process lays the pipe from where the main goes to the curb stop. And then from the curb stop on, Paul, which is, I believe, what you're referring to, is the resident's responsibility.
And the basis for that cost, like the last mile in Amazon's thinking here, what is that based on? Is it based on some difficulty in the distance from the pipe into the house, or is it
So I had mine done, and mine was an easy one. It was from the back of the house, around the corner, and down to the street. And they could pitch it, so I didn't have any issues. You have issues where,
you need to pump it up?
like, I have a neighbor who has a beautiful garden and patio, and they had to dig it up. So you pay the cost of any of the landscaping, like, let's just say my irrigation system took a beating in that case. So that was some money I had to put out that, maybe I didn't think about.
So it's not a function where there's an attempt to sort of pay for the piping to the town. It's to cover
You do it with a
the
private
cost
contractor.
of the individual to dig up his lawn.
Right, and I think, what we found in our neighborhood when we went through the process, that Dan was really helpful with neighbors to help them find the easiest route from the house to the street. And if you can do that, and you can do it by gravity and not have to have a pump, it's pretty straightforward. For some people,
So what is
You
the
had
average cost?
It really determines on your property, your elevation, exactly flower beds, on what you're gonna be irrigation.
so what
if
we
you
did,
got it.
because we are a homeowners association, we had a vendor who said, if you get us 10 people, we'll give you a 10% discount. And we got more than 10 people.
And is it conceivable that people say, I don't want to hook up? Or are they required to hook
They're
up?
mandatory.
They're required.
Could I just add too that I can never remember our beginning. Our assistant town administrator probably knows as much about this as anybody in the room, being our former health director, and helped design all the plans for when we did this 10 years ago. And the theory at the time, when this first went before town meeting, was that for the people that don't have to hook up, they're paying to replace a septic system at some point of 20 to 30,000. the every 3-year pumping, those
Yep.
types of costs, whereas these people will bear this expense, but then they will not have those further expenses.
Yeah, our
Plenty of
neighborhood was
numbers,
about
but-
35 years old, and my friend who's a civil engineer, he said to me, Martha, if I look at that system, I know it's not working properly. So I lucked out in the timing of it, because I would have had to replace the septic system sometime. And that would have been much more expensive than what I paid to hook up.
Everybody's situation is
Yeah,
so
Yeah,
different.
yeah. There are people in the neighborhood who just put in new septic systems, and they had to hook up. That's a tough one.
Yes.
And one more question, just again of general interest. How many private wells are there in this town?
Ooh, that would be a Board of Health problem. I do.
Oh.
Actually,
Board of
it's
Health,
about,
yeah.
I think, now relying on my memory, which is, hazardous, I think it's about 1,100, would it be that high?
Good.
Yeah, let's say 1,000, I can double check that, but I don't know.
That you know of?
I think you're about accurate, yeah.
Good.
That you know.
Verification.
Is it true if you have a private well, it's kind of untreated? I mean, it's not, doesn't go through, it's
No,
not
they
the
have
same
to-
quality.
They have, I'm gonna defer to me.
It's just, it's basically groundwater. You'd need to treat it yourself.
Or throw
And
it
that's
on the-
why there are regulations about how close your septic system can be and how close other people's septic systems can be.
But people use it for irrigation, it's not drinking water.
Correct, yep, there are plenty of
I'm gonna
irrigation
try to get us back
wells.
on track here, so we've got one more to go through. If we don't have any more questions on the well.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. On the pumps, Jason, if you lose power, do you have generators at each pump location?
Yes, we have generators at locations where we replaced 2, I do believe, last year, and we're continually bringing everything on.
So each pump has a generator?
Yes, I do believe so.
Okay. Just a thought, because there's probably some situations in town where portable generators, just like you may see with Eversource in a neighborhood, small-scale portable generator, diesel, that, just a thought that not only could you utilize that for some of your pump locations, but some places in town could use it too, so I just want to put it out there.
Yeah, and I do believe there was some discussions of getting a portable generator, just in case a generator in town were to fail, especially at a critical point that we need it.
I think you had to do that at one point, didn't you? Didn't you have to use a portable generator in one of those pumping stations at one point?
I don't know,
Okay. I see them going in, checking all that stuff down the street, but.
but yes, we still pump water when there's no power.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, when there's no power, we still pump water and treat it
Through your portable generator? Okay, yeah, I would expect that, but,
through our generators, yeah.
right, okay.
All right, so we'll just move on, we'll get this wrapped up. The last one is your Chatham Road improvements for $1.5 million in 2028.
So this is when we had the, from what I understand, this was on our,
Was on last year.
was on the list.
Yep.
So DEP came in, and what they do is, every 3 years, they come in and do a sanitary survey. And they come around, they walk through, they do a number of things. They look at all of our clerical, they look at our budgets, they look at our retained earnings, they look at backflows, they look at the water department as a whole in general. When DEP did this sanitary survey, they looked at it, and we do have some buildings and some garages that are near our well field. And they said it would be a recommendation from DEP to do something about that.
They're too close to the well, is that what you're saying?
It was their recommendation. And also, our buildings are getting old, and that's where we came up with the 1.5. Maureen, I don't know if you have anything on this?
Water supply wells.
Oh, right, it was talked about, before it even hit the plan, because we talked about it in the broader sense of should we move our whole operation even? And, basically, it's for a lot of the fluids that come from the trucks. And this will involve more discussion as we get closer, but we're thinking it would be better to put, what are those buildings that you can
space
get for
building?
1.5?
Oh, yeah, those, they have one at DPW, right? Like,
Yeah, the
yeah,
space
and-
buildings, I want to say.
so this is just for
That's
the
right.
design of the building.
No, they say they can do it for the whole bit. I find it.
Really?
Design and
Because,
construction.
can I just say, and I remember Dan put this on, you know, for a building, like,
Yeah.
and I think he also wanted to store some of the cars and get them out of the
Yes,
weather,
Some of
right?
the vehicles out of the weather.
And the DPW has a building to replace their existing building where they do all the, I think they do all the maintenance of the cars and everything. And that building is close to, it's $9 million for one of those, you know, and when we said that to Dan last time, he said, maybe I better go check and see what you get for 9 million versus what you get for 1.5. So, you know, I think 1.5 sounds light, but
Again, this is planning stages, and this was the number that I had to work with, so I put it in here.
okay.
It's a plug, it's a plug for the moment.
What is a
But I
space
would maybe
It's basically a
check with
garage.
Link about what his plan is, and his building might be, you know, 10 times bigger, I don't know.
But-
Um,
What is a space building? That's what I always
That's
wonder.
what the DPW has, I do believe, right now.
Yeah, it's like a metal
Warehouse.
building,
It's a metal,
Not much
metal
to it.
fabricated building.
doesn't seem so, but everything doesn't cost what you think it does
Yes.
anymore, so.
It's amazing how that.
Continue to look at it.
Yeah, so maybe, you know, you'll find out when you go through
Oh,
this
yeah.
phase, you'll get a number and it may blow us all away, but,
So this was the number, the 1.5 was what Dan had, and that was in there. So I put it in there as a space holder.
yeah,
And
no,
we
I
can-
appreciate
And we can
that.
talk about that.
So that's why I wanted to just bring that up. Dan also had the underestimated car last year, so,
Yeah.
love
So,
Dan, I love
I'm
Dan.
coming in, I'm navigating these waters
hear
to
ya.
see where we are and to see where we're going.
Yeah.
Navigating these waters, very appropriate.
Any questions, Scott or Frank? All good? Okay. So thank you for your patience for waiting. The information is really helpful to us as we go through it, so we appreciate it.
If there's any
Appreciate the time,
information,
and,
Yeah,
we're happy to talk about it all day if you'd like.
you're scaring us, Noreen, you're scaring us right now.
We got to all day.
Okay,
thank you very much.
thank you. So we have just two things for us to talk about. One of them is a site visit, and next week that we would like to do, Megan, and I know Joe's not here, so I don't know how he'll feel about this. But we would like to go to Brooks Academy next Thursday at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
And Sean is coming to our meeting, so we would like him there. And I
Okay.
will say that the Historical Society had come to our meeting last week, and they want to be included. And I will leave that up to Joe and the team to extend an offer if that's something they think
Okay.
is important, you know.
So your meeting next week is at 10 o'clock here.
It's at
10:15 here.
Here, and you're going to have it here in this room.
And you'll
Correct.
be able to see the extensive work that we've done at
Yeah.
the Kroll Barn,
Oh,
visiting the Brooks Academy.
okay. Paul will give us a separate
I'll
tour.
give you a tour of that.
Across
I
the
would like to
road.
see that.
So you want to set up a Brooks Academy on-site with Sean, and you're going to do that yourself? You don't?
No,
need
no,
to-
I would have you guys do it.
Okay,
Yeah,
we'll do it.
Joe doesn't let me do that stuff.
Okay, we'll set
Thank
it up with
goodness, because
Sean.
I'll screw it up.
And we will touch base with the Historic Society to see.
If Joe so chooses.
Okay.
I'll leave that up to him.
Okay.
I'm guessing they will be here, though, at the meeting, so. I would ask, could we do, so we need to get one more meeting in before, I think it's the 12th, Megan, no,
December,
it's,
what-
when are we
what's our joint-
get going in front of the select board?
I think you are going on December,
What's joint meeting?
The joint meeting?
is it the 9th?
It's Monday, the 9th. It's either the 9th or the 16th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
We don't have it posted yet, so.
means we have
So-
to do something the week of.
Well, we could do a meeting the week of, we need one more, so next week, we're gonna finish up all the departments.
Okay.
And then what I would like to do is one more meeting before the 9th, which would include the funding sources. And Joe is gonna bring back somebody from finance to talk about debt, so we can understand.
Good.
We never
Yeah.
got to have that discussion. And then we would also need to vote on all of these items And I would rather do that after we understand the funding and the debt situation. I personally would rather, and we'll vote each item on this capital plan at that point.
So we get a meeting on funding and debt, and then another meeting to vote, or we're
No,
doing
we're
it in
gonna
one
do it
year?
on the, I'm sorry, I'm making these meetings long, but we only have so many weeks, so.
Right, so funding and debt the first week of December is what you're saying.
Correct. I would give us Thanksgiving week off because people are gonna be busy and nobody wants to be at a
Funding,
meeting.
debt, and voting then for, in December.
Right. Now,
Okay.
we could keep it on the Thursday if that works for everybody.
December,
It would be
Fifth?
December 5th. We just have to get
Better than
everything done.
Thanksgiving, probably.
Yeah, don't you think?
I think
I
so.
think so. So could we say December 5th at 10 o'clock?
Just one concern I've had, in case we have any problems,
Yeah, I know.
I know everybody, if we did it earlier in the week,
Okay, we can.
it's just a thought, in case we have any
We
bones
could-
of
we
contention.
could meet
Just a
again.
thought, unless,
I don't disagree
I
with
don't,
you.
I don't want to, if somebody has plans, I'm looking at you, Paul, you're looking at me. If you don't want to, if Thursday's the only day we can make it do, we may have to run a little bit longer, just a thought.
Okay,
We could do Tuesday if you wanted to do the 3rd.
so the 3rd.
I'm okay with
That
Tuesday,
works.
and then if we have some issues, so.
I'll have to confirm Joe's available.
and then our first meeting with finance is with the selectmen. It's finance, us, and select
And
people
on the 9th. Yep. And so, Scott, would the 3rd, on Tuesday, the 3rd at 10 work for you? And Frank, I don't know if Frank's jumped off.
I'm here, yep.
Would that work
No, I'm
for
here.
you?
I put it in for now,
Okay.
but yeah.
Okay, so let's plan on.
Either Tuesday or Thursday is good for me.
Okay, thank you. So we'll work
confirm.
on Tuesday. If we need to call another meeting, we'll figure that out. If we can't get everybody here next week for some reason, or I'll put an agenda together to you.
Yes, please.
So right now, we have the 21st, and then December 3rd,
Correct.
and December 5th as well.
No,
No.
we'll leave that open if we need it.
Okay.
And then we're at the 9th on that,
Yeah.
at 6 o'clock with the select board.
And I'll confirm the 9th, because if it is the 16th, then you have
And we have
another
another
week.
week.
Yeah.
And then what I would suggest is, we can start to think about site visits that we can do whenever we want going forward. Because I think it would be interesting to go see other things that are coming up maybe next year. So we could do a little planning on that at some point. And if you all have particular things you want to see, we can definitely do that.
So
Perfect.
we had been usually done in December. We're going to extend.
No, we're not going to be, if I have my way, we're not going to be done in December because things are going to
Fine, yeah.
change between December and town meeting, and I want to make sure, and I will
Not
make this
surprised.
We're in
clear
session.
to the select board that I was not happy that we were left out last year. I don't want us to be left out this year.
Okay, so
The changes, if there's, when the, Megan, it would also mean that Joe really needs to get a number for Brooks Academy on this plan.
I
He's
believe
well
they're
aware of
meeting,
it.
they're meeting tomorrow, I believe,
Okay.
to get that on.
At this point, we could put a range on there, and I'd be
Right.
happy to discuss it, but I think in fairness, I told Sean we're gonna talk about it.
Yep.
Yes.
Just one point of order. Go ahead, Scott.
Does the funding discussion, is that restricted only to the upcoming fiscal year? Or do we get an idea of funding sources for the whole plan?
So it's generally for the fiscal year, Scott, although Joe did say he was having some discussions. He might not, it might be too early for him to feel comfortable talking about that yet. And you know what I've said publicly is if you look at this plan, and let's say we have 60 million, we only have free cash of about 5 million per year. And there are other sources for this that, through the enterprise, is it the enterprise funds or the revolving funds?
Enterprise funds,
Sorts of things.
waterways improvement.
But we've got
funds.
some big projects on here that are definitely gonna have to be,
debt.
gonna be debt. There's no doubt about it. So he needs to probably digest that. I don't wanna say for him that he's gonna be ready to talk about it in that meeting. We can ask him.
But the interesting thing that was mentioned, I think at the first meeting I attended, was this idea of debt being retired and therefore some capacity for new debt even within the Proposition 2.5 limits in terms of debt service and in ratios to the size of the operating budget, other measures of indebtedness,
Correct.
which, we're voting on the 5-year plan as well as the budget for year one,
Correct.
right? So
Correct.
to do that, it seems like we're flying blind without that sort of knowledge as well.
And that's what happened last year. We didn't even get to review the funding sources last year, which was, to me, not what should have happened, but we'll move on from it, except I can't stop
Okay.
talking about it.
We didn't have free cash last year when we voted.
No, we didn't have free cash last year. We didn't get free cash until February last year, and that
Right.
was part of the whole problem.
Part of the problem.
So we'll at least have that this year. And I would just say, my understanding, and I don't know, I may be wrong, but in past years and past times, the town only had a capital number that was they only put debt on for what was coming off. And unfortunately, with the sewer project, that just is not going to be attainable going forward. But it still should be somehow managed so we can see what's coming off, what's going on, and what's our asset servicing number, and how much of our operating dollar are we spending on debt? Because as you see, there's, there's debt that's gonna be attached to the golf group, there's debt that's gonna be attached to water, wastewater, there's debt in the school system. It all comes out of our pocket at the end of the day, and I just don't see that we've had a plan that's comprehensive for what all that is out, even 5 years. So I think Joe's working on that, but it's been hard, as you can imagine, with different finance directors over time, so we're not there yet. Okay,
Just one more thing.
yes,
I brought up to you, Madam Chair, especially on the 3rd. I'm the clerk, but with all the votes and all the input, I'd request of administration that, similar to what we had the previous 2 years, that at least that particular meeting, Judith Molstead could help out with the minutes. Last 2 years, Judith has done all the minutes. I'm willing to do this now, it takes me several hours, but especially on the 3rd, we're gonna have a lot of votes. I want to participate fully, so I request of administration to see if Judith Molstead could do the minutes for that.
and I did ask Joe that, I haven't had a chance to talk to him.
I'll follow up with him.
All right, anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience. I know it's been a
Thank
long
you.
one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caleb.